Okay, welcome everybody to the Freshly Awoken podcast rewind, is what we're calling it. Does that make sense? Does
Yeah,
that work?
podcast
Maybe it should be
rewind.
like the podcast rewind of Freshly Awoken podcast. Oh my God, I've thrown it. But obviously, this is our 14th podcast, and I'm glad that you guys have all shown up to. What we're going to be doing is a little bit of a review of what we've done. But before we get into the topic and what we're going to be talking about, let's intro ourselves. Obviously, it's just the two of us this week. We decided that for looking back, we kind of just wanted to be a little bit more chill and keep it simple. So it's just going to be me and Fresh. Obviously, this is Fresh's channel, but Fresh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
G'day guys, you're on my channel. I'm very tired at the moment. I've been on a boat all day. It was really fun though. But we'll see how we go with this review. Hopefully I can inject some more energy into myself and get things going. Yeah, but anyway,
straight into the drugs.
You're on my channel, Fresh Plays Live. That's where you can find me everywhere. We got a charity thing going on at the moment for World Vision Water. So come on by during the week, and we'll try and raise a bit before the end of the year. How you doing, Woke?
Yeah, pretty good. Obviously, hello everybody. TV, you can find me on Twitch at Mr. Woke TV, and obviously, actually, Mr. Woke TV on everything: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Even though I don't really put out that many YouTube videos, but hey, subscribe anyway. Yeah, as you can see, I'm getting in the festive spirit. I was actually, my family are doing a bit of a Christmas thing tonight, and that I'm not attending because I'm here with you guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You had a family Christmas thing?
Yeah, putting up the Christmas tree, and not like presents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just
like
putting up a Christmas tree and drinking eggnog.
Yeah.
And listening to Christmas carols. But, I thought, where would I rather be? Not there. I would rather be on the podcast, debriefing the year that was.
I've never had eggnog before.
What?
Yeah, no, like never. I assumed it was just an American thing. I've never had it here. Is it good? What's it like?
It's great. I love it. It's very milky. If you don't like milk, then you could walk away being like, not sure.
Is it got egg in it? I assume.
Yeah, it's got egg in it as well. Yeah.
Right.
But it's very creamy and.
Is it like custard? Well. It looks like it's like custard.
Yeah, it's kind of custardy. Yeah.
Okay.
But
you drink
with
it
a little bit of brandy in there.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, treat yourself right. Are you very festive? I know this is Christmas season, and I know you've got like a nice background and some Yuletide pictures.
I put up my Christmas tree, obviously. Nice. Not really personally. I'm not one for like birthdays or Christmas or something. I don't know. I'm boring.
Yeah, I'm not super festive either. However, my sisters have taught me that it's not okay to not get into the festive spirit for the benefit of other people. So I've got my Santa Claus suspenders on. Ouch. And I've got my bell hat. Look, it's got bells on it.
I can actually hear those bells like as you were coming. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We can all hear them.
Ring ding ding and dun, 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 dun. See, I know carols.
Oh man. All right, time to get on the beers, Work.
Oh mate, let's get on the beers. I am ready. What are you drinking today?
Beer review. So I've went pretty standard today actually. The single fin. But it's I've been really getting onto these recently, and I think they're a really good beer. So let me drink it through the podcast and let you know how I go. Woke, how about you?
Nice. Well, I've gone to a fan favorite of mine. I picked up a carton of this the other day, just because it was on special, and I don't drink it enough. But it is the Eagle Bay Kolsch.
Oh yeah, right.
Nice. See if my camera can see that. No, my camera's not great quality, but Eagle Bay Kolsch. So it's a brewery from down south. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the Eagle Bay Brewing Company, but it's in Eagle Bay. Who knew? Which is just down south. It's like just south of Dunsborough, near like Bunkers Bay and stuff like that.
Okay. And, I thought Eagle Bay was north this whole time.
No, it's definitely down south.
It's south,
south of Dunsborough. But they do incredible beers, and they've got a nice brewery down there that does like incredible food and stuff like that. And that's where I first tried it. And it's obviously become like super popular. Now this stuff goes for like $90 for a carton.
Wow.
But I'm pretty keen. Kolsch's, I love Kolsch's.
Yeah.
So, and I love Eagle Bay, and I've had this before, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Oops, I just cracked it.
Oh, don't worry, I heard you, so I'm cracking mine too.
Sorry, I'm cracking mine too. Yeah,
it has been.
It was freshly cracked. Cheers.
Cheers, mate. Straight into the Christmas spirit.
Also, we didn't do beer review.
Oh wait,
So,
okay.
that was our beer review.
That's actually pretty. I can hear it like the sync here, and it was okay. It was all right. I'll let you know it's all right. Yeah.
I think that was probably the best. I mean, all our guests have been trash at it. So
yeah, we should actually just always do this podcast with the two of us, and then we'd always be fine.
flip off everybody else. No, just kidding.
Oh my gosh, that's so bad.
Toxic. But yeah, what do we? I know I've already covered it a little bit, but what are we aiming for today?
Well, hopefully we can get into an honoursome guest after we've just dissed them all. As we go through the podcast that we've done so far this year. Talk a little bit about the highlights, I guess, of each one. Maybe expand on some topics, and then also talk about some plans for next year and what we plan to do with the podcast, and also potential new podcasts. We'll talk about that later. But I believe
you're around to the end. No.
So do you remember all the way back to our very first? I mean, our first one was an intro, but we didn't really. I don't know. I don't really count that one. It was.
Yeah, I do remember our first podcast. It was like basically just us discussing that we wanted to start a podcast.
Yeah, and it went for a long time. We discussed for like an hour and a half about how we wanted to start a podcast.
Yeah, and I haven't listened to that for ages. It would be interesting to go back and listen. Actually, yeah, I'm sure I would be terrible.
Well, I think your mic quality would
terrible. Oh yeah, that's right. I was still using my like headset mic, which is still here.
Oh gosh,
taped up at the side.
Duct tape to the side.
Hello. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but under my bells.
Mm-hmm.
But the second podcast was where we obviously had our first kind of topic, our first hard-hitting topic, not really hard-hitting, and but it was toxic masculinity, and we had Yvette's on, who you knew through your stream, right? He'd like been in your stream and talked heaps about like that kind of stuff, and
he was an ex-streamer as well.
And, that's right.
He used to stream Rocket League and a bit of PUBG, I think. And then he used to come into stream quite often. And I knew he did like work at like a philosophy office or a philosophy patenting office or something similar like that. So anyway, I knew he studied philosophy, so he was quite knowledgeable on a lot of different things. So it was good to get him on.
Nice. And we talked a little bit about how we've grown up in this culture that, or like there was a lot of talk this year, especially about how men need to do better, or how there was quite a few like social advertising campaigns from big companies that were like targeting that like toxic masculinity as like a bad thing, and also talking. I think we ended up coming to like a bit of a consensus that like we shouldn't be calling it toxic masculinity, because these kind of toxic things aren't just masculine based, they're everyone based. And that seemed, I vaguely remember that being the like theme of what we were kind of the consensus we were kind of coming to at the end of that podcast.
Stop being toxic, everyone, I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. But I definitely personally like hated the fact that people were targeting it specifically at men, you know, and it feels very targeted rather than just being like, hey, like, let's all be nicer to each other. Why not? But I've definitely, because of this year and the podcast that we've been doing, and I've definitely become more empathetic towards with my actions towards others, and looking at how my actions affect other people, and like running that through my head. So I think it's a net benefit, definitely to me, from like having discussed those topics.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear like Yvette's stories about being in the army, and like how that was quite a toxic place, I guess, in some senses. And then also stories about hospitality, and how there's how girls, I guess, are treated different to guys, and how there can be a older generation of guys who can be quite toxic.
Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. And like how, but like, yeah, we also kind of talked about how we shouldn't be perpetuating like toxicity on any level. You know, like if a kid is, for example, I remember we talked about that ad. You know, that ad where the kid gets like, the boy like pushes the girl over.
Yeah, the Gillette ad. Yeah.
No, it wasn't the Gillette ad. I think originally that was in another advertising campaign, like a government advertising campaign.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah, and it was like boys will be boys or something.
Boys will be boys, yeah. But then, and it was targeting not saying that to your boys.
Yeah.
and we were kind of like, well, don't nobody should be doing that. Like if a girl pushes a boy, which does happen when they're kids, a bit of rough and tumble happens here and there. And like you should be, no matter their gender, stepping up and being like, hey, that's bad, don't do that. And like reinforcing the like positive, being positive role models no matter what,
Yeah.
basically was where we kind of got to.
I guess that's the overall thing, and then we talk. I don't know if, but like, yeah, it's easier because girls a lot of the time people will be like, it's not very ladylike to do that, and then people will be
Yeah.
like, boys will be boys. So
Boys will be
it's
boys.
about
Yeah,
tackling them both in the same way, because that's
Yeah,
toxic
no.
behavior overall for both genders.
100%. And what else did we talk about? Definitely about. Oh yeah, that's right. We talked a little bit about how like our own lives as like guys and the people that we hang out with, the men that we hang out with, our group of like male
Mm,
friends,
mm,
how we kind of like semi bully each other,
yeah.
and how that's kind of semi bully each other, but how that's kind of perceived as like okay.
Yep.
This is obviously something that we touched on. I feel like we
A
touched on
lot
this in
of
so
times.
many
Yeah.
podcasts. Yeah,
Feminism,
just
social skills, yeah,
social
mental health,
skills, mental health. Like
yeah.
I feel like we cover this in like so many topics. So it's
I mean,
obviously like close to the front of our minds. It's something that
yeah,
we're both kind of thinking about if
obviously
it's coming up
scarred.
so often.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
I'm
do have the
obviously
story about the headrest. We can bring it back
the
up.
headrest. Hey, man, when I got slapped on the head and I just snapped. I
Just
saw
snap.
red. But I actually wanted to go back because in the mental health podcast, when we were discussing, we were talking about mental health and whatever. One of my friends, Zach, what are we calling him? Prozac. I
Prozac.
almost,
Don't dox
Prozac.
him.
Yeah, don't dox him.
You almost
Prozac.
doxed him.
I
That's so
almost
good.
did.
It's because it's
We
ripped
had
there.
Yeah, we had Prozac on, and he put it in like a really interesting way. Where, yeah, I know, where he was like, he called it the tall poppy culture, and he
Mm.
was saying that Australia has this kind of a problem. Well, depends on, some people don't want to call it a problem, but they're kind of, we have this like a bit of an identity crisis where we're still very young and we're jealous or a bit embarrassed that we don't have like a really solidified culture
Mm.
because we're quite a young nation, and so we hold on to these what we perceive as our Australian identity, which is this whole like bringing people down. Like if someone's successful, we want to like bring them down to our level,
Mm.
and that kind of plays into what we were talking about when we were talking about how we get like in our group of friends, we all get like bullied and stuff like that, and it's all just like fun and games and stuff like that, and we all just kind of like trying to level the playing field. But Zach put it in a really interesting way where he was like, I think it's like this Australian identity crisis that we're kind of having, but then
Mm.
also it made me think like, why are we not okay with success? Why are we not okay in celebrating people's successes?
Mm.
Which I thought was a very interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. I guess just off the top of my head, most of it comes out of jealousy most of the time, you'd think.
Hmm.
The young boys, or just any boys in general, being jealous of someone's success and feeling like they need to bring them down, like, oh, yeah, you can't get there if I can't get there, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I definitely think it's, yeah, rooted a little bit in like our own insecurities, like
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to see him succeed.
Mm.
So I'm gonna like bring him down. It's
Yeah.
just, which is so toxic. And I'm sure that
Yep.
like I don't think it's like specifically masculine, once again.
Mm. Mm.
Um
I actually see that a lot on Twitch. It's funny being on
mm,
here because people get really annoyed, and I guess we can talk about the e-girls, talk about it in the e-girls one. Comes up a
yeah.
lot with girl streamers, how people get really annoyed about girls getting a lot of views, and then I mean, people get annoyed with their friends getting more views and that kind of thing too, and try
Mm,
and bring them down. A little bit of that tall poppy syndrome.
mm.
So it's a good one to watch out for on Twitch for sure.
No, yeah, 100%. And it kind of lends itself, and I don't know if we really touched on this in the podcast itself, but like those kind of people, like when I have people around me that are like toxic, I'm like pretty, I try to be like pretty upfront about how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not always successful, but like in terms of like potentially like removing those people from my life, if someone's around me that's like that toxic, I'm probably gonna end up being like not seeing them anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
After potentially like trying to resolve the issues. But yeah, if
No wonder
someone's
you
trying to
haven't
bring
seen
me,
me in a few weeks, mate.
yeah, man, that's why. Yeah,
Toxic
wait, what did you say? I was ghosting your
12
messages or
unread
something like that.
messages. Yep.
It never happened. It never happened. But yeah, that was pretty much toxic masculinity, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely came out the other side feeling like, and have acted a lot more empathetic in the way that, wait, I'm been a lot more empathetic in the way that I've acted. Is that the right word?
Yeah, empathetic. Yeah, definitely. Think
Yeah, yeah,
about other
yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, think about how
Yeah.
my actions are going to affect other people, and
Yeah.
try to put myself in their shoes a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of me as a man to women, but like me in terms of every interaction that I have, and how is this going to affect them?
I think
Which
empathy
is,
is, if not the most important skill for people to learn. Being able to
mm,
put yourself in other people's shoes helps with your social, so it helps with all of your relationships and helps you become a better person if you can keep practicing being empathetic. Definitely.
mm, no,
Do it.
100%. But yeah,
Well,
that was pretty
yeah.
much it for toxic
Toxic
masculinity,
masculinity.
which was podcast. We called it number 2, even though it was our
Yeah.
first one with a topic. It was
Yeah.
podcast number 2.
Yeah. It was kind of number 1, but yeah, number 2. Then number 3, we had spirituality was the broad overarching topic. We had
Nice.
Vibe and Lewis on there, both also
Louis.
Twitch streamers. So Vibe's moved recently to Brisbane and hasn't streamed very much at all.
Mm.
He makes a
But I
lot of
think
YouTube.
he's been making
Yeah,
a lot more YouTube content, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
a lot more
He's been
YouTube
like, I've
content.
seen like a few of him. He like loves playing music and
Yeah,
like writing little songs and stuff like
yeah,
that.
that's right.
Yeah.
And he had some good experience with meditation and mental health kind of things.
Mm.
And Lewis is a designer for Twitch Melbourne and Twitch Brisbane, I believe. So he's doing it all. But he also streams. He streams his design stuff. I was watching him do something last night, and like I was like playing a game, I think, and talking with you and watching him, and I just kept like flicking back and looking at him. And by the end of it, I was like, oh my goodness! Like he started with nothing in this Photoshop and got this incredible design. I'm like super
Damn.
jealous of people who can do that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm too
We've
old.
had him on a couple of times, Louis. Right?
Yeah, Louis been on
Yeah.
3 times,
Twice?
I think, maybe.
3 times?
We'll get there. We'll get there. This is
We'll get
only
there.
number
Oh
3.
yeah. We got a bit of a tally, but yeah, spirituality. I remember it was really interesting. You and me were a place where our spirituality was based in Christian upbringings.
Yeah, I guess.
In like Christian households kind of thing. And that was kind of like our basis growing up. Whereas like both of them, oh wait, no, Louis had been to like a Catholic
School,
or
I
boys
think. Yep.
school, I think. But then Vibe had like not been around it at all until he was like an adult.
Yeah. It was actually really interesting talking with them because they weren't at all religious, but were quite spiritual in their own sense. So it was cool. Vibe had some really good ideas about meditation, talking about the importance of meditation and how like meditate. And then we talked about how praying can be like meditation and a few things like that. And then you wrote down science leading people.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I this is something since the podcast. I don't think we really touched on it during the podcast.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've kind of like, obviously whenever we talk about like these topics, it definitely brings it to the fore of my mind. And going forward after the podcast, it's something that I'm a lot more aware of, and I'm like noticing it more in my everyday life. I don't know if you've found that that's similar for you,
definitely.
Fresh. Yeah, just because I end up doing like a little bit of reading on it, a little bit of research, and hearing other people's points of view, it just kind of like opens me up to, I don't know, noticing it more. But it's something that I've noticed that people have been talking a lot more about how like science is affecting us in terms of spirituality, and how quite often people are seeing that like science is, it's like this thing where it's like you start believing science more and more and more, and you start relying on like facts and the scientific data, you stop relying upon like your spiritual side, and you end up like becoming very, what's the word, like where you what's the word, um you just like rely upon like facts rather than like rather than like leaps of faith and like belief and like your own feelings kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'm
get
not
what you mean.
100% sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So, and it's something that I've noticed, especially with a few friends of mine, where they're like, well, the more that I like talk about like the facts and about how science influences the world and where we came from and the science behind all of that, the less reason there is for me to need to believe in some sort of god or
Mm,
like some sort of like higher spiritual being and but also not that that's necessarily a negative thing because those people are also like I'm okay with that. I'm
mm,
okay that there's that my belief now is that there's nothing after we die,
yeah.
that we just kind of like die and go into the ground,
Mm,
and uh but yeah, it's definitely something that I've noticed more and more people talking about since doing the podcast.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And in terms of spirituality and religion in Australia, we had recently, we could talk about the what's it called? The Religious Freedom Bill. I think that's what it's called. Religious
Oh, damn.
Discrimination Bill that's come
Yeah,
out
that's
from.
right.
So I believe it was drafted by second draft Religious Discrimination Bill. Who drafted it? Was it Scott Morrison or was it this Chris Porter guy?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I've seen it around. I don't know where I've seen it around, maybe on like Facebook and stuff like that. I think like quite a lot of my like more progressive friends have been like putting it like social media statuses being like
Yep.
this is what it says. It says that it's okay to do this.
Yeah.
And there's some crazy ones in there.
Yeah. Well, like, true. I'll read out the student one. So
Yeah, go on. Read me out some.
a student with disability may be told by a teacher their disability is a trial imposed by God.
Wow.
There's a single mother who, when dropping her child off at a daycare, may be told by a worker that she is sinful for denying her child a father. I mean, there's a lot of these ones.
My thing is like like is this an issue? Are people's
Yeah,
religious freedoms being hampered
is it
in
often
Australia?
that like you feel like you really need to tell women that they're sinful by not denying their child a father?
Yeah, and and there's some weird beliefs in Christianity, not just Christianity, sorry,
Yeah.
because it's not even though Christianity has been like the main focus of the bill, I think,
Mm.
and it's coming from maybe some Christian leaders or something. I'm not
Yeah, Porter
100%
and
sure.
Morrison are, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily going to reflect on that, but like, I want to know, what I want to hear about is how it affects, like people wanting to wear, what are they called? Like burqas
Mm.
and stuff like that. Like, is it protection for religious freedoms across the board? Um, and I don't know. I just don't think there's a market for this. Is there like, like,
Yeah.
do we need this bill?
I don't know. It's probably all in relation to the Israel Folau stuff, I guess.
What's the Israel Folau stuff?
Do you remember how he wrote about like how all gay people are going to hell on Instagram?
No, I
You
missed
didn't
that
hear about that?
completely.
Oh, okay.
No.
So yeah,
How did I miss that?
and he got
Wow.
fired. You didn't hear about this? It was
No,
huge. Oh man.
no, I didn't hear
Okay.
about this at all.
So Israel Folau, do you know who he is? Have you heard of him?
No,
He's a
no.
oh my goodness. He's a rugby player. He's a Australian. He plays for the Wallabies. Well, played for the Wallabies.
Actually,
Um.
yes, I did. I did hear
Okay.
about this.
Okay. Yeah,
Wait,
and
and then he ended up suing or something like
so
that?
he did. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think he might have won. His case maybe for unlawful. What do you call it?
Dismissal?
Like dismissal. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that's where it all came from because
Okay. Okay.
he wrote that in and everyone was like, it's his religious freedom to discriminate, and then yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I mean, that's the thing is like there's levels of religious freedom, but then what someone was talking to me about, and this was in regards to we were talking about like freedom of speech versus like social censorship and deplatforming, which we're going to get into in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were saying that like everybody has their like human rights,
Mm,
and there's like a human right to not be discriminated against.
yep.
And if you're deliberately spewing like derogatory stuff about if you're perpetuating a stereotype or
Mm,
something, I don't know, like then you're discriminating against somebody, right?
mm. I think
Mm,
it's got to do with I think there's protected classes as well of people and got to do with protecting them.
yeah, right. But yeah, I just I don't think our religious freedoms are being threatened. Okay, I think that there's a way for him to do that. Like if he doesn't believe in, if he believes that homosexuality is a sin. Wait, I would love to. I'm surprised that this hasn't like crossed my
Yeah,
desk
you
more,
should.
but
Yeah, you should. He like yeah. I'll show it to you another time. It's too late now.
yeah, no, yeah, it's too late
Yeah.
now. But like, so I'm surprised it hasn't crossed my desk. But if I feel like there's a place for him to say that though, right? There's a, or is it,
Uh,
or is it like that's a personal belief and he should keep it to himself?
I think it's got to do with who he represents. So, Rugby Australia would say you're not allowed to represent discriminatory views.
Okay,
So
okay,
if you're being derogatory to a set of people, then we would tell you that it's not okay. And I believe he had multiple warnings. People will tell me that that's not the case, but a lot of other people say he did also have the case. He also did have multiple warnings.
interesting.
So yeah, I mean, if he was told, here's what we agree to, like our code of conduct as a rugby player for Australian rugby, then and he broke it, then that's their ground to stand on, I guess.
Yeah,
But I don't know. It seems like he won his case or whatever.
yeah. Well, I think he probably won his case about unfair dismissal because they didn't follow due process, not
Yeah, something
necessarily
like that.
because they didn't have a ground to stand, or like a leg to
Yes.
stand on in terms of him discriminating.
Yeah.
They probably just didn't follow due process.
Yeah.
But in terms of, because I think he was like, yeah, I think what I read was that I read about the fallout where he was like starting to sue them for the amount of money that he has lost
Yeah.
based on them firing him. And he was like, I could have been captain of this team in 3 years or 5 years or something
Yeah.
like that. And so he was like saying that actually you've cost me this amount of money. That's what I saw anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
He probably could
not
have.
to
He's
get
an incredible player.
yeah,
Just
I think yeah,
bad dude.
yeah, just an immoral dude. But yeah, I just religious freedoms. It's an interesting time, and I'm going to be tracking it closely
Yeah.
because it seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah. People, I don't
Because
like the whole fear narrative where people are very scared about their freedoms.
yeah, right, and yeah, but then yeah, and so I'm interested. Would it have been okay for him to say that if he wasn't representing somebody?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could go and say it and we wouldn't lose our jobs. Well, it depends. I mean, I don't know. I might lose my job. Probably not. I mean, there's a lot of things I could say on social media that would mean I lose my job, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's the same with me. Like my company that I
Yeah.
work for has a social media clause
Yeah.
where if I especially say stuff about the company without getting it cleared first,
Yeah.
then that's something that's like a no-go,
Yeah.
you know? But if I'm just expressing my personal opinion without reference to the company, then that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But
If
yeah,
I feel like if I went on Facebook or something and was like, all women are smarter than men, or all young boys are smarter than girls, or either way, or something, I feel like that would be really that would definitely, I'd get called in about something like that, because that would be something that it would not be equal in my workplace, you know, or like I'd be not perpetuating equality in the workplace.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I definitely found the spirituality podcast enlightening because it was because of the differences of opinion and where these guys were coming from a place where they'd kind of learned to they'd learned to be spiritual and learn to get in touch with that spiritual side of themselves, not from like a Christian base, but from another base where they were like, this is something that's good for my mental health, that's good for my like life stability and my happiness overall, which I found really interesting that they were on a similar level to us, but had to arrive there from completely different means.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, that was a spirituality podcast, which was enlightening to say the least. But and then we moved on podcast number 4, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Which we did Australia versus USA. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the one that went for like 4 hours?
4 hours, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the topic was way too broad.
Yeah.
When you're like Australia versus USA, that's like 2 massive topics.
Yep. And we still
and
also
you're like,
still had like, like put in any kind of time constraints or anything. We're just like, we'll just keep
And so,
talking till we stop
yeah,
enjoying
we'll
it.
just,
And we just kept enjoying it too much.
yeah, we kept enjoying it because to be honest, the huge topics. There's so much to talk about there that we could have gone on hours and hours and hours longer than. And even at the 4-hour mark, we were kind of like, okay, look, it's getting a little bit long. Maybe we should end it. But like, I don't want to end it. Like,
I'm pretty sure we chatted for like an hour after at least.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
No, it was really interesting. But the guests we had on were Yvette's and Yvette's again, Mr. Yvette's again. Name. He's been on.
He's around the place. He gets around.
That's 2 so far. But we also had Foxy Roxy Lee, who she changed her name. No, she didn't.
No, her name's still Foxy Roxy.
No.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Licky Whoops. But yeah, Foxy's from America.
Yeah.
And so obviously we needed some Americans.
2 Americans versus 2 Australians.
2 Americans versus 2
poor
Australians.
Foxy
That's the way to do it.
Had to do with the 4-hour one. Has not come back since.
Yeah, right. She's been like, no, that was too much. I remember the big thing that I remember about that podcast was how Yvette's he rented a house and it came with a gun.
With gun. House comes with gun in America. So with a shotgun.
With a shotgun. A bloody shotgun. And like that I remember so many people in chat. I remember when that came up and everybody was just like, what?
Yeah.
What? And I know that our friend Porkins, I don't know if he's here or not, but he was so shocked by it.
Yeah, yep.
Oh man, it was actually so funny.
Yeah. So funny.
But yeah, other than that, we kind of touched on a lot of things. I remember us touching on like animals and like how dangerous our animals are perceived.
Yeah, when they've got bloody bears and
they've got bears.
Yeah.
Oh my god, bears! Don't get me started on bears. I'm terrified. I'm terrified of bears.
Really? Have you ever seen a bear?
What? No, I've never seen a bear.
Oh, okay.
But they're terrifying. Are they not terrifying?
I guess if I saw one, I'd be scared.
They're like massive, double the size of a human wolves. Or
yeah, but it never like crosses my mind to be scared of bears because they're not around.
Terrified. I'm like, give me a snake. Give me a redback spider any day of the week. Over a bloody. Give me a snake over a bear any day of the week.
Yeah. I feel like we won that Australia versus USA
I think, we definitely
just
did.
quietly, I think we won.
Oh yeah, 100%. We didn't really touch on politics too much in the podcast because I know that Vets was kind of alright with it, but Foxy was like, I'm kind of a bit over talking about the politics of America. So we kind of like steered away from the politics a little bit. But man, there's some crazy stuff going on at the moment. Trump got impeached the other day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know the rundown of what impeachment means and that? And
I know that basically it's the House of Representatives saying who are Democratic, the Democrats have the majority in the House of Reps in America. And they have voted and said, hey, we want to impeach the president because of these reasons.
Yeah.
And then those reasons are presented to the Senate and there's like a little bit of a trial. And then the Senate votes on whether or not he will be impeached or not.
Removed from office or not? Yeah.
Removed from office. He's still impeached.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it was like the Republicans have like a
it's like 65 to almost.
60% majority in the Senate. So unless like 20 or so Republicans flip and decide they want to remove Trump from office, then he's not going to get removed from office.
Yeah. Well, it needs to be.
That's a lowdown, right?
Yeah, it needs to be. I think it needs to be 2/3 in the Senate. It's not a half thing. So for him to be removed from office, I think it needs to be 2/3 of them. So it has to be a lot of Republicans that would have to switch over, which doesn't seem like it will happen. Either way, historically, he's the 3rd ever president to be impeached on the grounds of abuse of power for all the Ukraine blackmailing and such.
Were the other two presidents that got impeached were removed from office?
No, they both resigned before they got removed, I believe.
Wow.
But wait, no, is he the 4th? Was it Clinton? I feel like it was Clinton, Nixon, and
Nixon.
Who's that other dude?
Reagan?
No. Anyway,
I don't know my US presidential history very well, which is not surprising.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and Trump was so it was only abuse of power, the Ukraine stuff, and then obstruction of
justice. Because he wouldn't let people
testify about the Ukraine stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think they left out all the money stuff and that too.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was probably they couldn't prove it or couldn't get enough proof, I guess. But it's interesting. Oh, wait, sorry, is someone talking about your your like
What?
tan line? That you're like very
What?
burnt.
Does it actually look like I have a tan line?
Yeah, it actually you looks like so sunburnt.
Really?
Yeah, I've noticed it a couple of
Wow.
times
Well, there you go. I mean, I was literally in the sun all day.
all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't slip
Went
slap
on
enough.
a no, I don't think I did it all because it was kind of overcast, so it was a
Yeah,
bit dumb of me. But yeah. Do I look sunburnt? I don't think I look that sunburnt.
maybe it might be just like shadows or something from your light. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's probably a little bit.
In it, there you go. You don't look sunburnt if you
Snorkeling
like look
mask
up.
on.
Yeah, I know, right?
No, I
Imagine a
mean,
snorkel sunscreen,
I didn't
sunburn
snorkel for very long.
for
I was
very
just
long.
out
So
there.
you did.
It would
There
have
we
been
go.
the sunnies probably actually that of course.
Interesting.
I got this
Well, I
random.
think
Anyway, sorry, go on.
we did actually touch on I think the UV in Australia
Oh, when
when
we
we were
talked
doing the
about Australia
podcast.
versus USA. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
I think we did actually touch on that and how easy it is to like crisp up really quickly
Yeah,
and
yep.
get skin cancer.
Yeah, all the British people come over and they get super burnt.
Yeah. So do you reckon he's not gonna get removed?
Yeah, he almost definitely won't get removed from office, I guess.
Really? Because like I was getting the sense from a bit of the stuff that I was reading that there's quite a few Republicans that are kind of getting.
There's a few, yeah. But I don't think it'll be enough.
Don't think it'd be enough. Okay.
I guess it's the
And
real
no
test
chance
of
of him
their.
resigning.
No, there's no chance of him resigning. He's like, did you see that letter that he wrote? The like 6-page long letter.
I didn't read it, but I
Oh
heard about
gosh,
it.
yeah. It's like, he just like lies about stuff, man. Like,
Mm.
it just says all these crazy things. Well, he was saying that it was like an undue, like unconstitutional process, the impeachment, which is just completely false. So I don't know. He just like he's like panicked right now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, 100%. You can there's like there was something that I think I was talking to my brother about it where he was like Trump's actions are actually like you can track or like there's some like social thing that social modeling about the way that you deal with like criticism
Oh, yeah.
if you're like a sociopath or if you're like a something that you can directly track through Trump's through the way that Trump reacts to like negative things being said about him. And it's like where you throw it back on the other people, you attack in like you start attacking the person for other them doing wrong stuff and
Yeah.
like and you can like track
Yeah.
through it and be like, oh my god, Trump does that every single
All
time,
these things.
which I found like pretty funny. I'd need to look it up or get Ben
Yeah.
to tell me what it was, but it was pretty funny. But yeah, well, if he's not going to be removed from office, then obviously there's an election next year
Yeah.
in America.
Who knows?
Who knows? You're obviously you're pretty progressive and you're a progressive person, Fresh. Right? Okay. So says me. So
Yeah.
says
Oh, good. Thank you.
yeah. Are you following like the Democratic primaries at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah. Quite a bit.
What do you think?
I think they're screwing themselves over with too many candidates. Like, and I guess the way it works is that they, they all rip on each other about certain things. But
Yeah.
it makes, I don't know, makes them. They show the weaknesses in all of them, and then they go up against Trump, who's just going to run, and then it's like, oh geez.
Yeah. But like, didn't obviously the Republicans don't the Republicans do the same thing when they don't have a sitting president?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so. So yeah, it's
So
just the system.
When Trump got elected, he went through the Republican primaries.
Yeah. And destroyed them all.
And destroyed them all.
Yeah. He was
because he just like attack.
Yeah.
I still am like, how did he get elected?
He was
I'm actually
I don't know whoever wrote his stuff, but they were pretty good at like the way you attack people. I guess he had a plan to. He just kept singling people out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think hopefully, probably who's got the best chance of being probably Warren or Bernie, I guess.
Yeah. Have you looked at any of the smaller candidates? I know that they've got like less chance of getting like winning the primary.
Yeah.
But some of them have got some like really, really interesting ideas.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the way that the political campaigns work in America is that it's all about money.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, a
like
lot of it is.
if you've got the money, then you get your name out there, and if
Yep.
your name's not out there, then you're not going to get the you know.
Yep.
And unfortunately, because it means that these people that are not necessarily like big names and getting heaps of money can't actually get their message across.
Mm.
It's kind of like a little bit of, it's not the
Lobbying.
best system.
Lobbying. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not great.
It's not the best system for like freedom of speech, and for like a place that for a place that says, hey, freedom of speech is so big.
Yeah.
The way that money is doing a lot of speaking is a bit
Yeah.
trash,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, who was it that said democracy is the worst system we have except for all of the other ones? So not a great system, but it's the best thing that we've got so far.
it's the best thing we got.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like there's different types of democracy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And
just in this current climate, it's so easy because I mean we're going to talk about single voter stuff soon, but single
Yeah.
issue voting, but like it's very easy for people to be single issue voters, and you get enough media surrounding a certain thing, and you convince enough people of something, and then that's how people get.
yeah, I mean, yeah, sad but true reality of where we're at in our current time.
Shall we move on to animal rights?
Yeah, no, yeah. So that was Australia versus USA.
Australia versus
and then,
USA.
Yeah.
We're at
What do we have
48
next?
minutes, so we should keep
Oh.
flying through. We're at like number 4 out
through.
of 12 or something.
Nice,
All right, let's go fast. But this one's cool because animal rights. We had Frey, good friend from here. We've met up with him in his hometown.
Had some beers.
Had some beers with him. Fly, who's now got a new hometown of New Zealand.
Oh my god, yeah, moved to New Zealand.
Pretty crazy, crazy kid. And Lawless, who's a professional chicken hunter. Had those three on. Funny part about the Animal Rights podcast, now we're both vegetarian. Went vegan even.
I
Not
went vegan
because of the podcast, but
I went vegan
after.
But I want to put an asterisk there because I didn't. My ethos was not necessarily like I'm going to be the strictest vegan of all time. I'm never going to eat animal products ever again, no matter what. The way I approached it was I want to like drastically reduce my like animal product intake. And so I did you just
I read
chat?
that too. Yeah. Daddy Web Polly.
Oh god. Man. Anyway, sorry, just because thanks for distracting me, Kelsey.
Damn it, Kelsey.
But no. So yeah, I was approaching it from not being like I'm gonna be super strict and I'm never gonna eat any meat or animal products ever again. I was like very much like, look, we're gonna see how it goes. I really want to drastically reduce my amount of animal products, and I have since doing this eaten animal products. I definitely didn't want I didn't want to impose on other people and like be an inconvenience to other people. So there's definitely been situations where I have gone to someone else's house for dinner and I don't want to make them cook like a vegan meal when they're cooking for like 6 other people that eat meat.
Yeah.
You know, so I just went and like did the best that I can. I probably ate some cheese and whatnot like that. So
yeah, I've been exactly the same at like school camps and that. I don't there's like a very small amount of facilities for us to cook and that, so I just eat whatever I'm given. And even recently we had a massive Christmas party on Thursday and we had all this leftover meat which is just going to go in the bin otherwise, so I was like, oh, I'm not going to like, I almost feel worse about wasting that.
Waste. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's something else as well, because I definitely didn't approach it from the animal rights side of veganism, you know, where I'm like, because and this was something that I was okay with in the past, and I still remain consistent with it to this day. I'm okay with killing my own meat. You know, I'm not adverse to the idea of animals being killed for meat. I don't like the idea of them being tortured for it. I definitely think I'm okay with the fact that there is going to be pain involved in some shape or form when you're killing an animal.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you see pictures of people torturing cows or them being they've been already hung up and skinned, but they're still alive. Like, I'm not okay with that. I think there should be like strict regulation about it. And I think we probably need to regulate these industries more harshly in Australia, especially because that's where I live and I know a little bit more about what goes on. But I didn't really approach it from that area because I don't really care that animals are getting killed. So I approached it more from the climate change side of things, where I was like the animal industry, high production meat industry is not healthy for our environment in terms of land use, water
Mm,
consumption, um, the way that we are going to need to feed our world in like 10 years time or 20 years time, when we're at like 10 billion people, and it's not a sustainable way to feed our world, and because of land use and stuff like that, and the protein um, conversion rate between the grain that is fed to these cows and then the amount of protein we actually get out per like kilogram of meat or whatever.
mm,
That's how I approached it. So because of that, I hate it when like meat gets wasted. So if like you were saying, if there's a tray of meat that's already been cooked and it's gonna go in the bin, you know,
mm.
I like I'll eat that. I'll eat that rather than it go to waste.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I'm definitely along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's the high production meat industry that is the problem.
Mm,
So if we were all back to what 100, 200 years ago, where farms were properly sustainably treating their crops and their animals, I wouldn't have a problem with any of that. I also don't have a problem with animals dying at all. It's more it's these stalls that they have and these grain-fed cows that sit there all day, every day
mm,
for their entire lives, and it's not natural for cows to be doing this. It's also not great for us too to be. I mean, there's different things that say it's not good for us, that kind of meat and that kind of thing. But
yeah.
it's those high production ones that are the issue. And if it could all, like, not be like that, then I'd be totally happy with it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that we're just, yeah, it's like one of those things. And I know that we've touched on this a little bit, Fresh. It's like, are we okay with people just trying to reduce? And
Mm,
I think at the time you asked me this, you were like, would you be happy if people just start reducing their meat intake? And I was
mm,
like, no, it needs to be all or nothing
mm,
or something. Because but then I like, in thinking about it, I think what you were trying to get at is like the way that we convince people and help like get us to where we need to be is to like ease them into it and be like, hey, just reduce it a little bit, 1 day a week.
mm.
Whereas like I thought you were approaching it from like, hey, it's okay for me who's decided that this is something that I care about to just kind of like ease into it with like once a week rather than just going full flog.
Yeah.
Whereas like I disagreed with that wholeheartedly because I was like, no, I need to set the example.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And
Yeah,
like, you actually do, when you set the example, you also raise a bit of awareness about it too, because people are like,
exactly.
oh, why are you not eating meat? Oh, because of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But in terms of like your everyday Joe, like the likelihood of him just like stopping eating meat out of the
yeah,
blue
yeah.
is
It's
like
very, very,
pretty low. So like just
yes,
even advocating for like some sort of reduction
yeah,
is I think a good thing.
yeah.
Um yeah, what else do we have in there under animal rights?
Yep.
Oh, the
Go, go.
game we didn't talk about this on the podcast.
No, and I don't know much about this.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of like vegan podcasts lately, and no, wait, not podcasts, documentaries on Netflix. Mainly is where they're like getting out to the masses. And there was one recently called Game Changers, which was talking about uh, how easy it was to how easy it was to be a high performing athlete and still eat vegan.
Mm,
And it debunked all these myths of meat eaters, of meat eating in like athletes and stuff like that, where it was like, oh, you can't eat soy because it's going to lower your, or up your estrogen levels and lower your testosterone and all these other kind of things. And it debunked heaps of them, and it was a really interesting podcast. And it actually came out like a couple of weeks after we did the animal rights podcast.
mm,
And I was kind of getting, it was like it came out the week after I started going like, hey, actually, I think I'm gonna be vegan. I think I'd been trying to do it for like 2 weeks when when the Game Changers documentary came out. And I had heaps of friends mention it. It got
yeah, yeah,
around.
yeah,
This
definitely.
documentary got around. I
Yeah,
don't know
heaps of
if
people
you've
saw it.
like talked about it at all or heard other people mention it.
Yeah, I only heard people really triggered by it, like, it's all rigged.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there was definitely a little bit of that, and I I think Joe Rogan put out a podcast or something.
Yeah.
Where with I think we looked a little bit at it before with Chris Kresser,
Oh, yeah.
where he like debunked the Game Changers podcast.
Mm.
But then the guy that one of the producers of the Game Changers podcast came out and then like re-debunked all of the debunking, and so it's like it's kind of like one of those things where it's like I'm so skeptical of documentaries
Yeah.
because they present one side of an issue and they want you to believe in their issue that they're putting across. They don't want you to believe anything else. So it's so like, man, I'm just getting it. It's so annoying because I don't want to be so skeptical. But
Yeah.
everything I watch, I have to go and spend hours and hours and hours more doing research on just to like figure out what's like bullshit.
Yeah.
Really bugs me.
True.
Really bugs me. But yeah, it was an interesting documentary at least, and definitely brought up a few questions and a few brought up some interesting research that I then went and checked out. So yeah, there was actually a meme that came up because there was like there was a meme I saw that was like, I think I'm going to go vegan, and it like he was like there was this dude watching Game Changers in the background.
Did a lot of people? I bet you a lot of people thought you were vegan because of it.
100%. It was on Facebook, this meme, and I got tagged in it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, works.
Yeah,
he wants to be an athlete.
yeah. But yeah, it's just interesting. But yeah, once again, those documentaries, that's almost propaganda. Like every documentary you watch is borderline propaganda.
Yeah.
I think personally, like, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit annoying, but that's the world we live in, I guess.
Only things you can really trust is like peer-reviewed journal articles these days.
Yeah, no, 100%. Didn't we also in the animal rights one? Like, didn't I tell that story about how I ran over a dog?
No, but did you run over a dog?
Yeah, no, I definitely did.
We were talking about running over dogs, and you said you wouldn't care.
Yeah, and no, I definitely mentioned the story.
What story?
Well, I mean, look, go back and check out the podcast.
Okay,
obviously,
right.
But I definitely mentioned it on the podcast. I'm like 100% sure.
Oh,
but
maybe you did. Yeah.
This dog was running across the road and like went full pelt into the side of my van that I was driving at the car.
Yeah.
And unfortunately ended up dying.
Yeah.
And it was like just a pup, and it was very sad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it didn't affect me overly.
Yeah.
Because
what are you meant to do about it?
That's the way the world works.
Yeah.
Things die. Things live and then they die.
Yeah.
And and didn't care.
Yeah, no. He didn't even care.
Yeah, but I definitely mentioned that in the podcast. So go back and listen to it. It was a funny story. Not a funny story, sorry. Sad. It's
a hilarious story of the time.
Oh my goodness. I just
drove into a dog. No, I remember we were giving you hypotheticals of whether you'd get out and like, oh, you got your glasses. Forgot I haven't been able
to see this whole time.
Oh no.
I'm blind.
I'm so blind. Oh man. Okay, let's move on.
That was the Animal Rights podcast, which was number 4.
Yeah.
No, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we moved on to podcast number 5, which was violence. And we had Erin, who I don't think she does anything. She doesn't stream, does she?
She's does a bit of graphic design on her Insta.
On her Instagram, yeah, and but she hangs around the streams a lot, and she's a good friend of everybody. And she had some really interesting insights. Greavesy, who once again he was streaming, and now he's like not streaming anymore. Is this a trend?
No, Greavesy. What do you mean? Greavesy streams, doesn't he?
No,
actually, not at the moment. At the moment, he's not.
I'm pretty sure he's like stopped.
What,
completely.
Forever?
Well, last I talked to him, I think he was thinking like he was done.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, you can still check out his channel and potentially follow him and look at his content. But he added some really interesting stuff to the conversation. We had Cat and Fly on, and obviously we had Fly in the last podcast, the Animal Rights podcast as well. And Cat and Fly are a couple now, living together in New Zealand. They met on our podcast.
I think they met in a Minecraft server, but the first time Kat ever saw him was on our podcast, on the Animal Rights podcast.
That's right.
It was the first visual cue. She was like, "Wait, whoa,
hello." Yeah. But yeah, the podcast was on violence, so we touched a lot on like physical violence, in terms of like coming to fisticuffs
Mm.
with people, and because that is a big problem in Australia that we have fisticuffs. How about you? Boom, boom, boom. Um, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, that is a big problem that we have in Australia, and we kind of discussed, like, I don't know, discuss the issues that we have with it in Australia, and how it's pretty bad for our culture and our society, and how we need to
Mm.
like put a stop to it, and how we can go about that,
Mm.
how we can learn to deal with our anger better. Um, we also talked about the military, and like in terms of it being almost necessary violence, um, in terms of us not being okay with certain things in the world that go on, like genocides, etc.,
Mm.
where it's actually kind of the duty of the rest of the world to go and intervene, and the way that's done is unfortunately militarily,
Mm.
um, which was definitely interesting to get everybody's views on that, because there was quite a lot of people that were that, and most people are very against violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's kind of like, well, violence, no, 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 no. But then when it comes to military violence, everybody kind of recognizes it as a necessary evil.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that. Yep.
Yeah. Um, but that it obviously needs to have like proper oversight,
Mm.
which unfortunately not a lot of our military actions in the world, not just Australian, sorry, but like a lot of, like especially American military action does not have the correct oversight. It's all done in the shadows, or it's not.
Mm.
Quite a lot of it doesn't have like the UN ratified and all that kind of stuff. So, um, yeah,
Yep.
there was an interesting podcast, and I was very interested to talk about it, just because, um, I'm definitely in two minds about, like, that's a big contradiction to me, that we can be when we can be not okay with violence in like normal society, but then in terms of military, we're totally fine with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I guess there has to be incentives for people not to do dumb stuff, because people will do
Yeah.
dumb stuff otherwise.
No, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was all we really touched on with violence. There was,
Mm.
yeah. Did we touch on bullying a bit? I don't think we really did.
Not so much. We talked about domestic violence a little bit. The difference between
Domestic violence.
men
That's
and
right.
women,
I forgot about that.
physical differences between men and women, and like how it's much more acceptable for women to be violent to men than men to be women, which is not. Which, like, we understand why there's like a level of acceptability, but also not ideal. Similar to toxic masculinity, it's like violence is violence. It's not good either way. But because men are like 9 out of 10 men are going to be more physically dominant than a woman, so it makes a difference there how you perceive things.
No, definitely, and it makes it. That's why there's that stereotype of, or that more stereotype of thinking, hey, well, like men shouldn't hit women, but it's okay for women to hit men because the damage that can be done.
Yep.
But yeah, and like I think that potentially there would be, like if you saw a small dude on the street getting beat up on by like a big woman, or like a like buff woman, like you would step in. I feel like most people would step in and be like, yo, what's going on here?
Get out of here, buff woman.
Get out of here. I don't know why did I do that voice? I don't even know. But yeah, that was pretty much all we covered in violence, right?
Yep. That was violence, and then we went on to media and technology,
which was number 6.
Yep. So that was number 6. We had Licky again. Wait, no, this is Licky's first one.
This is Licky's first one.
Licky's first one. She does stream, so it's Licky on stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/it's Licky. Fly again, Cat again, and Yvette's again. And we were talking a bit about we talked like about deepfakes a bit, and interesting stuff like that. How tech's gone to a place where things are getting a bit hectic.
Deepfakes. Have you watched any of the?
I haven't really got into them. Not too much.
Okay. I think with this topic especially, I found it's very hard to stay up to date. It's like technology in general, how fast technology moves.
Yeah.
That you can take like a snapshot, but unless you have your finger on the pulse constantly, you get lost so quickly these days that like you can't keep up with what's going on.
Yeah.
I definitely found that. Whereas with the other the other ones, the other topics we've done, like, animal rights, violence, they're very um what else we got? Sorry, spirituality. They're like slow moving topics. Society evolves and changes, and the discussion moves quite slowly. But whereas when with the discussions around media and technology, because the environment changes so rapidly, it's so hard to stay up to date. Stay relevant in the like discussion.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah. Whereas, like, for example, with like animal rights, I've like been able to like keep my finger on the pulse and notice when other people are talking about it
yeah,
and still be relevant in what I'm talking about, even though I'm not necessarily like up to date with the current like
yeah.
discussions.
It's
With
I
media
guess
and
it's more
tech,
of an
it's like I
ethical
hear
issue.
something and I'm like, wait, what? We're talking about that now?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, that's crazy. We've moved so far past where we were.
yeah. It's a
Mm.
bit less of an ethical, like timeless ethical issue than more of things that keep progressing. But
Yeah, no.
what? So you're writing down something about the recent laws proposed by
Yeah.
Attorney
Yeah.
General
So this
Christian
is
Porter.
this is Christian Porter again, which we mentioned
Yeah.
relation to the religious freedoms bill that's being brought up in Australia at the
Mm.
moment, which in and we're not 100% sure of the connection there. We didn't manage to find, right. Is that right? We
I
didn't
think he
manage to
actually
find if
wrote it.
he
It
was
looks
the
like
one.
it's proposed by him on this
Okay, it was
site.
proposed by
Yeah.
him. Well,
So he's been a
in
busy
that
boy.
case, yeah, he's been a busy boy. Our Attorney General of Australia, Christian Porter, Charles Christian Porter, but he, in regards to the religious freedoms bill, I think he's like pretty off the mark. But he proposed. There was another proposal recently. He didn't propose. He actually, it's not a law. It was just
Mm.
a proposal that he brought up. So he was discussing a lot of topics, and he was like, "Hey, we need to like be looking at doing this." And
Mm.
what he wants to level the playing field between publishers, like media publishers, and social media platforms in regards to defamation. So, for example, if I was to have write an article in a newspaper for a newspaper, and then that newspaper decides to publish my article, and that the article that they publish is defamatory, like I make baseless claims baseless claims about a person or a brand that damage their brand or their
Mm-hmm.
monetary outlook or their job position or their life in some way, then that publication, um, as well as the person that wrote the article, the publication can also be sued for defamation.
Mm.
Whereas with social medias right now, if you post something, if I hop on Facebook right now and I go, this person did this, and yeah, you hear my like when I like
This person
my,
did this with his bells.
yeah, with my bells. If I hop on Facebook and I'm like, this person did this, and it's a bold faced lie, and then they see that company loses out because of it, and it was just a bold faced lie, that's defamation. And
Mm.
because it's on the social media platforms and they're based in America, cited very well in Australia, that just goes away with the wind. It's
Mm.
like it's a place. Social medias at the moment are places where you can just say whatever you want, basically. And his proposal was, hey, we need to put a stop to this. They need to be held accountable for what is said on that platform, because you do see lots of newspaper publishers getting on social media and companies on social media putting out posts and influencing the way that elections are going and putting out their propaganda and stuff like that. And without having it to be real, without any consequences for like if they're just lying, bold face lying.
Yeah.
So I think there is. I don't know what that law is going to look like, but it's
Mm.
interesting to me. It's interesting to me that's a topic for discussion.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It is interesting him being a very conservative person, pushing for something that a lot of people will see as an infringement on, or could be a potential infringement on freedom of expression or speech. Could say it.
Mm.
But that was and we've talked a lot about freedom of speech versus censorship on social media sites and that kind of thing. And to be honest, as when you brought this up, this is the kind of thing that I think is warranted for deplatforming. So when people come out with blatant lies and not willing to engage in like a good faith discussion about things, and will just literally bring up falsehoods and won't be able
Mm.
to back them up, that's when I think there's nothing you can do except say that person is not even valuable at all on this site. So let's remove them from here. So that's kind of where I come from when I'm talking about where we need to censor people and deplatforming people.
Yeah. And like this is something that we've disagree. This has been one of those issues that we've like danced a bit,
Yeah.
because it's like we've kind of like discussed our points of view and we disagree.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things where it's like we're like we just like end up butting heads a little bit, and we're just like, well, we're like we do both disagree, and we're not going to change each other's minds. Because I am definitely come down on the side of no censorship at all, because I think that you end up encouraging the thing that you're trying to stop, I feel. And when you cut people out of the conversation, those people end up banding together, and they're not in the forefront of society anymore, and they're in the shadows, and I don't like what happens in the shadows. I prefer all of that to happen out in the open where everyone can see it. That said, I still think there's something to be said um, for the enforcement of the law.
Yeah.
And but to completely remove someone from social media platforms because of what could be mistakes,
Mm.
you know, is I don't know.
I
I
think
just
it's
think it's
infringing on social
dangerous.
media's expression of freedom, though, to force them to platform any idea that people have.
I think that at some point our online activities, the way that the world is progressing, we have to get to a point where we recognize that our online interactions need to be protected like our freedoms are in like the real world. Because as we develop, and the internet becomes more and more part of our daily lives, it's becoming more and more where we get all our information, where we view political stuff, um, where we have all our social interactions, not like heaps of our social interactions. And at some point, we need to be like, okay, our online interactions are our life,
Mm.
and are an integral part of society today, and we need to protect that, rather than being like, well, these companies have this thing that like they've created this thing, and it's their intellectual property. That I think only works up until a certain popularity point. When you get to there needs to be a threshold. There needs to be a threshold where we say, okay, man, you've crossed from being like a really popular company that people use to being like the sole competitor of like millions and millions, billions of people. Um, and like you've crossed the point. You've crossed a point in the population that uses your site. I think that's how you need to approach it potentially,
Then
where
they'd
you
have to
say,
like government regulate the company.
yeah,
Will have to be government
I,
controlled, basically, I
yeah.
guess.
I think freedom for companies to do whatever they want and to set their own rules, 100% up to a point, because at a point that becomes, it no longer becomes a private company. It becomes something that the public is using.
Mm.
That like the general public is using. And yeah, the stats on like how many people and how many accounts and stuff are on Facebook is just like insane. You
Yeah.
know?
So if it was like a real life, I'm trying to think of like a real life parallel. If let's say at school I had control of the announcement system and I was
Mm-hmm.
told to announce things that people tell me, um, would you say it would be okay for the government to say you have to announce? So let's say someone came and was like, "Here, announce this: all Mexican people are drug lords or something." Should I be compelled to have to announce that over my announcement system?
So obviously you have this like topic of scale here. So
Yeah.
like yeah, so like we're talking about a school. So if so if I no, I don't think that's right. I think that the way wait. I think my argument is that those students have a right to listen to your announcement system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were to go, and if you were to say, "Hey, you've done something wrong," therefore you're no longer allowed to.
Sorry, you cut out there. That
So, like, if you say, "Hey, student, you've done something wrong," so you're no, wow, struggling. You're no longer allowed to listen to the announcement system and get information about your school.
yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
interact with your fellow students because you did something wrong.
But I mean, people on Twitter and Facebook and that who are banned can still see stuff. They just can't post stuff. I just see
Hmm.
I see issues with saying that if we want like a free market, saying that companies have to like you have to that they have to platform every single idea because things could just unless you want the government to completely control these companies once they become big enough.
Well, my
Um,
thing is that like you get but like so yes, it works in a perfect system, right? In a perfect world where those companies are only taking off negative things, when they're only like, all right, this person is incredibly racist, all right?
mm,
And they're stirring up violence towards black people, you know, and that's a really bad thing. And we've warned them several times, and so now we've deplatformed them. They're banned from Twitter. All
mm,
right. Yes, it works in the best case example, but the problem is once you give someone that power to be like, hey, yeah, man, it's okay for you to make your own decisions and to like regulate this market that like most of us use yourself, go for your life, then you get situations where they're actually not necessarily just using it for getting rid of those like really toxic people, but they're also potentially using it for silencing differing political opinions or people that are gun rights activists or like people that really want to just own their gun in America. You get you get them being silenced and stuff like that. So I think in a perfect world, yes, it'd be great if like we could trust these companies to do the right thing, but I don't think we can.
true. But then
And giving someone that a level of power, especially a private company, that level of power, rather than a government regulated body.
but if you think the government regulated it, would they not even more so silence certain political views?
No,
That
I
would
don't.
be
What do
the
you mean?
that would
No
be the
way.
issue. That so let's say Trump regulated all of social media right now. Do you think that would be a good thing?
Yeah, but with government regulation comes openness, right? Or comes like public documentation and public access and stuff like that. Whereas like right now, like the way that Facebook and Twitter and stuff work, they're all private companies with private code that we don't know how it works. We don't know the ins and outs of it. Only the companies know the ins and outs of it and how it works.
And that's kind of but that's kind of the beauty of it because you're free to like say Trump sucks and so on.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lawsuit in America at the moment. So one of the Democratic primary candidates, Tulsi Gabbard or something,
Yeah.
Tulsi something. She during so she took out Google and Facebook ads, and she had like a ad account to
Mm,
help get her name out there during some sort of debate. All right, and the debate was happening, and obviously whenever there's a debate in the US presidential election, there's people go, oh, who's this girl, she's speaking really well, I want to know more about her. So they go hop on Google and they go Tulsi whatever Gabbard, I forget her name, and they look her up, and when she's got targeted advertising, it like pops up with like the stuff that she wants them to click on, where it's like, hey, the first link that pops up is Tulsi Gabbard's homepage for her website where it lists everything that she stands for, you know?
mm.
But instead of that being available, as soon as the debate started, her Google and her Facebook advertising accounts got banned, so that wasn't there anymore. And that the first things that were popping up were like smear articles from opposition talking about her and her, even though it wasn't her beliefs, it was someone putting words in her mouth about her beliefs. And there was no, they didn't give any reason for it. they obviously, her people were like, yo, what's going on? How can we get this back up? They did not give her any way that they could get it back up. They just dragged their feet until the debate was over, and then once the debate came back, once the debate was over, her accounts miraculously were all of a sudden unbanned, and it was flowing normally and stuff like that. And this is stuff that she's paid for Google and Facebook. And there was still no reason. And she's actually taken them to court. She's taken both of them to court, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it was just Google. I can't remember. But she's taken them to court because they still haven't given her a reason for why there was like bans against her accounts, and she couldn't get her advertising out there. And so that kind of thing is what scares me. When you've got these private companies who, yes, ideally in this ideal world, we want them to just do the right thing, but they're biased.
Yeah.
And the government is like elected, and there's oversight, and there's like things come out, you know?
Yeah, I guess you hope. So it's almost like we both have kind of slippery slope arguments, where yours is like, it's a short. So once private companies start regulating people, they become very biased, and you see that in the media. You know, we have all these like right wing media or left wing media and that kind of thing. And I'm saying though, it could also be a dangerous thing for the government to take over all of the media and the, I guess, social media as well. So if the government controlled all of the media, then things can also not go so well, because no one could stop them.
Yes, and I'm not saying like taking over. I'm just saying like some sort of like oversight, or some sort of some regulation with the industry. Once you reach a certain threshold of the population, you know, where you say, okay, this is your program or your company has reached a point where it's like no longer your everyday run of the mill program. It's like picked up by the majority of the population and used on a daily basis for all of these things that we require or we use in our everyday lives. So, okay, now you've entered another bracket where you're becoming more of a public domain, and we need to like oversight you a little bit more.
Do you think they'd be able to regulate though things that like breach human rights? I don't know if they'd be able to do that. Like if it was like the discrimination of an entire class and that kind of thing.
Well, maybe, and I'm not gonna. I don't have all this, but like for example, maybe once you hit that threshold, all of a sudden you go from like anonymous accounts to you have to have a driver's license, or you need to be like registered to vote to get an account, or you need to be, and maybe not, that's not the right solution, but you know what I mean. But once you hit that threshold, you can't be anonymous anymore on that platform. You know, you have to be a person connected to a person, like, so that if you do stuff, then you can be held accountable for it, like by the police, you know. I don't know. I just think that I don't think the way to go is to just let companies arbitrarily ban people based on their own whims.
So you think it's a problem now?
I think we've seen problems. I don't think it's like the end of the world issue right now, but I think that we're seeing problems come up, and I think those problems are going to become more and more frequent, and these companies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more powerful by the day and by the second. And I think that we probably need to start looking now at how we can like fix it, rather than waiting until there's like a serious problem where we go, oh my God, Facebook genuinely rigged our election in the way that they wanted. You know, like you hear about it as well recently, where it was like there's Facebook employees quit Facebook to start like political campaigns. Like, and I get that, like, and I get that it's kind of like one of these things where it's like, well, they can do whatever they want, you know. But what about if they're getting some sort of favoritism from this company that we have no oversight over, that has complete power over like the narrative and who's seeing what, and their algorithm is God, you know? I don't know. I just think it's really dangerous. Really, it can potentially be really dangerous.
Yeah, I think I'd push more for avenues for people to take legal action against them, and increased, just better ways that people can take legal action, like this lady is, against the particular companies.
Yeah, no, 100%. But like that comes from like that comes from a bit of government regulation, whereas how do we get on this? We were talking about Christian Porter, the Attorney General, saying, hey, we probably want to level the playing field here because like it's kind of unfair that you've got this platform where people can say whatever they want and not be held accountable for it. Whereas in our papers, in our newspapers, if you say whatever you want and a lie and it defames someone, then you're going to be prosecuted for it.
Is his assertion is that he wants people on those particular, so he wants to hold Facebook accountable for what people say on the platform.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that there's definitely problems with that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's 100% the way to do it, but I think that talking about it, because that's all that it is at the moment. I'm pretty sure there's no proposed laws. He was just like, hey, we need to be doing something about this.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I think talking about it and figuring something out and figuring out the best way to do this so that it's not a free-for-all on social media platforms is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I know we kind of like got stuck into that again because it's, and I want to reiterate this. This is like one of the only areas.
Hold on, sorry, you cut out heaps there. This is only one of the only areas.
This is one of the only areas that you and me kind of
disagree.
Get stuck into it, And I love it. I love like actually debating with you rather than just like
agreeing with everything.
What did you say? I agree with that 100%.
We better get some guests on who have different opinions because we agree on everything. Damn it.
But yeah, what else do we talk about? I think that was pretty much all for media and tech.
Yeah.
But
on to feminism.
Which was podcast number 7.
Who knows, mate? Let's stop doing the numbers because we need to speed this
up.
up.
I'm getting
an hour and a half.
100%. So yeah,
actually, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're getting there. We're good. Yeah,
we're getting there. Yeah. We're getting there. We almost covered all of them.
Yeah.
So feminism was our next podcast, and we had we wanted the balance to be like pretty even between men and women. So we had Sintamaz on. Sintamaz is a streamer. Her name is just Sintamaz on Twitch.
Twitch.tv/Sintamaz. Yeah. SINTEMEZZ.
And she, she's fairly young and she lives over in Europe. And so she was definitely a part of the conversation. We wanted her to be in a part of it. We had Erin on again for, I'm pretty sure, her second podcast. We had Licky on for her second podcast. And we had Greavesy on for his second podcast.
Yeah.
So a couple of repeat offenders who were like very comfortable and had gotten used to how we kind of how it works here on the Freshly Awoken podcast. So we talked quite extensively about the pay gap, I'm pretty sure, and how we don't really. I think we came out. I think we all sort of ended up agreeing by the end that there's not the pay gap is quite often touted as some like really unfair thing against women, and like we need to do something about it, but that actually it's not really all that bad in terms of like when you compare the hours that men work compared to the hours that the average woman works, and when you compare when you take into account that these businesses need to take into account that if they're hiring a woman, they're going to be out like 9 months of the year with that hiring, potentially if they're pregnant or if they take maternity leave. Whereas if they hire a dude, they don't have that risk, right? And I wanted to discuss something which I don't think we actually discussed on the podcast, is that like a way to get rid of that perceived wage gap is to start advocating and bring the balance back in terms of men's and women's rights in the workplace. So if you have, for example, a man, if you're hiring someone, all right, and you're looking at a man and a woman, and this woman is potentially going to have 6 months maternity leave, and you're going to have to hire someone to like fill in that space. But this man is not entitled to paternity leave, or maybe he's entitled to like 2 weeks or something like that. Then obviously you're going to like potentially be skewed in hiring the man. Whereas if we level the playing field and say, hey, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're in a relationship where you have a child, you're entitled to 9 months off, or like not 9 months off, like whatever it is, a month off, 2 months off, or whatever, to help look after and nurture that child through its like developmental stage or whatever,
Mm.
then you remove that. You remove that from the equation for employers.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's several things where I think that that's something that needs to be done. What if you said, hey, it's not okay for men to be working themselves to death in the workplace? You like, let's lock down hours and say, hey, you're only allowed to work 40 hours a week, no more. Anything above that is like some extreme expense. And you know what that would do? It would say, companies would be like, hey, you're not working more than 40 hours a week. Like, go home right now, and because otherwise they're going to have to pay you through the nose, and if they did that, then all of a sudden men and women are both working 40 hours a week, rather than men being like more career driven, or more gung ho and wanting to go for it maybe, and working 60-hour weeks so they can progress in their career. I'm not saying that women don't do that either, but on average, the men that do that are more than the women that do that.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm getting? Do you see
Yeah.
what I'm getting at?
I think I don't know if that'd be I know what you mean, but I don't know if that's the best way to do it. And I also think I disagree about the pay gap stuff. But
All right, hit me with it, because I remember before you were like, I kind of
yeah.
thought that I agreed with everybody, but now
No, so
kind of
I really did think I thought I did think I thought I agreed with everybody back then. But then
yeah.
but at the same time, I think there was a lot more nuance to what we were talking about. So my idea about so we've got this $70, 70 cents to the dollar, right? Pay gap that comes out with in stats and that kind of thing. And often and it's and what I was saying is that might be I think it almost is a bad thing. So that's why I guess I'm disagreeing and saying that I think it probably is a discriminatory thing. But you have to look at the reason. So why is there a pay gap? And and a lot of the people look at those reasons and say, well, if we account for hours worked, if we account for education, fields of education, if we account for jobs worked and that kind of thing, it equals out to $1. But I don't think these are very so. Like in like a science experiment kind of way, you wouldn't want to control these variables. I think they're more the dependent variables that should be measured. So we should be looking at why do women tend to work different jobs, and why do they work less hours, and why are they less assertive, and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So and from that, do we think women are particularly biologically less capable of working more hours, or are they choosing different jobs? Is this a biological thing? And part of it might be biological. And the wage gap might always be there, but I think a huge part of it, and we can see this over the years of like how many women were in the workforce like 50 years ago, like hardly any. So we can see as we've introduced more media surrounding women going into different jobs and marketing women into different, like larger representation of women in different areas, they've flocked to these jobs, and it's become more and more increased. So I feel like there's quite a large amount of social pressures that go into education, what people choose to be educated in, what jobs they choose, and that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
I do get what you mean, but didn't they try this in there was like Scandinavian
Yeah, so they've
couple of
tried.
Scandinavian
Yes, they've tried it for a few years in Scandinavia, and it's
Yeah.
and Scandinavia is like a super, well, I mean, all those countries are very egalitarian, and it looks like things are going the other way, which is, I mean, that's great. If that's the way that people want to choose things, then that's great.
Yeah, but
It's not an
doesn't
issue.
that so isn't what people say is that's a argument for not doing that? Because right now we're at like we got the wage gap or whatever, and when they were like, hey guys, if you want to go into like engineering, then um we're gonna not prop you up, but like we're gonna
Increase,
encourage
yeah.
increase the amount of funding and stuff or whatever for people that are hiring more women in these roles, and universities, we should like up the quotas of women that are going into these roles to study these things. And what they found was that with the equality of, or like with this more incentivized equality, you ended up seeing women actually just choose that they didn't want to do that. They wanted to go into nursing, and they still wanted to go into the same areas that they wanted to go into. Isn't that what they like found?
Possibly. It seems like there is definitely biological propensities for certain types of jobs, but when you look at it on a biological scale, it doesn't look like it's 90-10 or like in terms of percentage or anything. It's pretty like men and women are more similar than they are different, and and things work out like that. They all work out in the wash to be like relatively similar. But I guess so. I just think the way that the studies should be looked at is different, rather than trying to so like it's almost like if I was saying I'm actually as good as all the NBA players if I was tall, if I accounted for being really tall and really athletic, like it's the wrong thing, the wrong variables to control for, I think.
Okay. I see, because my whole thing is like, okay, my whole thing is like, I do believe that there has been some like discrimination, all
Mm-hmm.
right, in terms of hiring in the workplace, and the way that women, obviously they're coming out of a place where they were perceived as second-rate citizens, and they didn't have the vote, for God's sake. They didn't have, they were forced into these roles, but well, not necessarily forced, but it was like a social stigma, that they go into the home and look after the kids and not get educated and stuff like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing, we're still seeing the like negative aspects of that. All
Yeah.
right. And so what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be better if we remove all kind of imbalances between the sexes, so that you can accurately discover and accurately perceive the wage gap? Because when you've got an employer that's faced with a monetary decision, all right, which it is, and he's a business and he's looking to make money, and then a monetary decision being like, okay, if I hire this person, I'm going to get like for a year, all right, this guy's a man. And then over here I'm presented with this lady who, even though it might not happen, there is a percentage chance that she might have a child, and I'm going to have to pay her maternity leave for this amount of time. Surely, bringing the men and women equal in that employer's eyes gives you a better chance to see the wage gap as what it actually is, rather than having those like discriminations there.
What, I don't know what you mean. Sorry. In terms of their maternity and paternity leave, is that what you mean?
Yeah, maternity and paternity leave,
Okay.
100%.
I'm
So
pretty sure
it's,
men can get the exact same paternity leave. So if someone has a baby, men are
yeah,
allowed to be the ones who stay home and take care of it while the women go to work.
completely equal.
I'm relatively sure in Australia, it's like if you want to be a man and stay home and look after the kids, you can get the same grant. Obviously, for the first little bit, it's not possible, I guess.
I
So
don't think that's. I'm fairly certain that's not right.
okay, well, I mean, I was talking to
Yeah,
like a men's rights dude who was like, yeah, no, men get the same can do that if they want.
interesting. I would need to look that up.
Yeah, well, Slow's
I'm
saying not
Yeah,
paid paternity leave.
nope.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
that's true. So there should definitely be a push for that. I agree, definitely.
yeah, but like, so that's my thing is like, okay, so you obviously have things where, even though I agree that it shouldn't be happening,
Mm,
there shouldn't be an employer there that's discriminating.
mm.
He is incentivized in some way to discriminate,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
definitely. If
why
that's another
not?
thing.
Why not? If we have these incentivized
Yeah.
discrimination things here, why not remove them
I
from
mean,
the
I guess
equation completely?
I mean it already is illegal to discriminate, but they still probably do.
Yeah, but it's illegal to discriminate. However, you can't prove discrimination.
Yeah, it's true.
It's very hard to prove discrimination
Yeah.
if that they don't make it very apparent,
Yeah.
right?
So
So
they've gone one
if
step through legislation and said it's illegal to discriminate, but the social
yes,
pressures are still there, or the monetary
well, the
pressures are still
monetary
there.
pressure,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if they yeah, that's my point of view, and
Yeah.
your point of view very valid as well. That like, hey, I think that there's something to be said for um, giving these women more opportunities, and and seeing how that plays out in different fields that are male dominated and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I could
Yeah,
have
no, I
sworn
agree.
that.
Like, definitely should be exactly the same paternity leave. Do you think that there would be some social pressures though around if women had a baby, went straight back to the workplace, and a man stayed behind to look after the baby? I can think of plenty just within my family where that would be seen as unacceptable and like not a good family thing you should do. You know?
Yeah, I definitely agree that those social pressures would be there.
Okay.
But that there comes down to like uh that's like that's not got anything to do with the pay gap.
Why?
That's not. So the pay gap is like what they're saying is that employers are paying women less than men. Yeah.
Yeah. So people who don't interpret the results correctly,
So
yes.
why is your family's point of view going to affect the pay gap?
If social pressures influenced women into fields or like either taking them having babies, taking maternity leave rather than men,
Mhm.
or into fields that are lesser paying jobs, then the social pressures are influencing the wage gap.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No. 100%. 100%. But then I'm more from the advocacy part of point of view, where you've got like feminists and then people out there being like, well, this is controlled by the patriarchy, and
Yeah.
we need to like stop these employers and stop these people from like, we need to close this gap to zero, by like forcing people to pay more money,
Mm.
right? Rather than maybe they need to address it in their own. Maybe
Yeah.
women need to get together, just like they're saying men need to get together and stop each other from being toxic. Maybe women need to get together and be like, hey, stop bullying us into being mothers
Yeah,
if
but
I don't want
that's
to be mothers,
and I
you
guess
know?
but it's a societal thing. It's not necessarily just women that need to get together and tell each other. They need to also tell
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah,
like
you're right. You're
it's like if you think about your family, like even our parents' generation, that kind of thing, it's
right.
definitely it would be an issue for them to see women doing manual labor and stuff. It's not ladylike and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess it comes down to like how dominant a person you are and being like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck I want to do.
Yeah, but that's I didn't think that's reasonable to expect of people. If well, no,
Really?
no, it's fine. Like everyone can do that,
No,
but
no,
I would say
but like what?
the
Sorry.
vast majority of people aren't going to do that. So that's what creates things like a wage gap.
Yeah, but so what you're saying there is we should be finding a way to get women more equal pay, but we don't expect them to. But we don't expect them to do it by doing what they want to do. We're gonna like find a different way to to equalize this money rather than just being like, hey man, you can do this, just go and do it.
No, that's great, but doing what you want to do is far more nuanced than just everyone doing what they want to do because of social pressures.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I don't think that there's a way for like government to legislate to fix that. I think
No, it's more a cultural thing and a societal thing and a media thing and a marketing thing. It's not
yeah, but
necessarily a legislating thing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't like the idea of being like, hey, we're gonna if that's like a main cause of the pay gap,
Yeah.
then I don't think it's a we shouldn't be discussing it in terms of like, oh, like, well, let's incentivize government regulated
Not
incentives
yeah,
for
definitely not
more.
government regulated incentives. But
Well, I mean, that's what happened in the Scandinavian countries. Like in the universities and stuff, they were like, "Hey, we need to get more women into these fields, so we're going to up the quotas of women." Therefore, because the quotas of women were more up, men missed out.
I don't know if that was what happened. I'm pretty sure they because weren't you saying that it went the other way and that's why way less women
Yeah.
studied in these
Okay.
fields?
Yes, I'm not saying that men missed out.
Yeah.
I'm saying that like there was through the incentives, like by incentivizing women, you're. Yeah. Okay.
So
I
I
lost
also
my
don't
thought.
agree that
Yeah.
government regulation is the way to do things. And I don't know about things like affirmative action. I know it's trying to like it. I guess I'm equating affirmative action to this like women going into courses with lower ATARs and that kind of thing. I know it's trying to fix a problem that's there. I don't know if it's the best way to do it. I don't know if it's a good way to do it. But it's good to recognize that there is social pressures around these things.
Yes.
And as I guess as podcast hosts, I wanted to clarify that we should be working better as a culture to helping people to go where they would like to go. Because at the moment, I think it's just far more nuanced than everyone has a chance to get wherever they would like to go. But
I
I'm
would
also
agree.
heavily, I think that that a lot of what you do in life is really determined already by where you grew up and all the pressures that come into your life.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I agree with you. I but I'm definitely go down a little bit more. I still agree. I still think that the pay gap is not necessary. Is that quite a lot of the conversation around the pay gap is done
Mm.
in a not helpful, unhealthy way
Yep, agreed. From both sides, definitely.
from both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
people look at the number. So hardcore progressives, I guess you'd say, look at the number and say men and women are working the same job and getting paid differently, which is
Mm-hmm.
incorrect, and that's a bad way to look at the stats, right?
Yep.
And then hardcore conservatives say, actually, if we account for every variable there, men and women get
There's no
paid.
pay gap,
There's no pay
which
gap, and men and women get
which is
paid the
not true.
same, which is also not true, because the reason you do studies like the gender pay gap is to find these
Mm,
variables. And like, yeah, it's just, I feel like it's just
yeah.
like a science experiment where you're looking for the things to measure. One of
Okay.
them is the gap, but a lot of them also are these pressures for people
These
to,
social pressures,
social
these
pressures.
discrimination,
Yes.
incentivized discrimination things and
And
stuff
like
like I was talking about.
we
Yeah.
don't know if they're totally discriminatory in terms of like men getting raises over women, that kind of thing. That's what a lot of
Mm,
people would argue, but we don't know that yet until we kind of study it. But it's
yeah.
possible that they're there and they're
I
influencing a pay
think
gap.
another thing that is like people try to boil it down to like just a catch-all, like 70 cents on the dollar.
Yes,
But
yeah,
that's not the way that works. It's not the way that
yeah,
any issue works. Everything is nuanced,
yeah,
and like each industry would have different things and different issues and problems that affect it.
yeah.
Like does, like, if you look specifically at nursing,
Mm,
I wonder what the stats are on that. Like
mm.
you're going to have a vastly greater number of women that are working in that
Yeah,
industry.
definitely. Well, hey,
And
my
um,
job in education, it's like it's crazy. Like the ratio of men to women is there are way more women in education than
yeah.
men.
Okay. Well, yeah, in that case, I kind of agree with what you said then. Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
cool.
I just I yeah, I
Feel
didn't
like we had to
understand it.
clarify.
Yeah, no, 100%.
But I also
But
agree
yeah.
that we should push for men having paternity leave that's equal, and that all
Yeah,
those things
well,
are really
yeah,
good.
and not just paternity leave. Like, there's a few other issues as well, but
Yeah,
like, yeah, in general, well, that was a huge part of the feminism podcast. I remember talking about the pay gap for a long time.
yeah, yeah.
But you put on here as well. What's this
I get
MRA and
well, like
feminists?
this actually, like we were talking about this. So men's paternity leave, men will be like, well, we don't get the same paternity leave, right? These men's rights activists, and
Mm,
also similar with toxic masculinity, men say male suicide rates are up so high, and
yes. Yep.
things like can be really, and it's undeniable that things can be really hard for guys, and then so I find these real parallels between men's rights activists and feminists, and where feminists will call it toxic masculinity when they're saying men don't unable to share their feelings and bottle things up, and it ends up being mentally unhelpful, and they end up with mental illness and that kind of thing. So they're kind of advocating for similar things. They're branded differently, and so they just like clash and don't get along. Whereas
Mm.
if men's rights activists rebranded to like, or if both of them rebrand to like
Rebranded.
egalitarianness
I
or
think
something, then it'd be
we
good.
touched on
Yeah,
this on the podcast.
yeah,
I remember being like, my point of view was, I don't like the word feminism,
yeah. Well,
even though
the
I agree
connotations
with
behind it.
quite a lot of the feminist sentiments. I think that they need to rebrand. They
Yeah,
need to stop with a word that by its definition, or not by its definition, but by the way that its roots, it's I don't know what you call that, but like its word roots,
mm,
it excludes men.
mm,
You know, why would you do that when
mm.
you say that you're all about equality? Like,
But
call
then
yourselves equalists,
we
or
got
whatever.
to the point of saying it's like, then it's similar to saying people have got the Black Lives Matter movement, and then you go, well, why are you excluding white people? It should be
Yes,
all lives matter, and that takes away from the movement.
yeah, it does
So
take
I'm
away from the
cautious
movement.
in saying that.
It does take away from the movement, but at the same time, I do have that like thing in the back of my mind where it's like, well, why did you name it? Why did the people that created the movement call it Black Lives Matters? It's
Mm.
because it's about black people.
Yes.
It's because they want to advocate for black people.
Yes.
If it's then evolved into them being like, oh, actually, yeah, you're right, our name does kind of exclude people, but hey, we're gonna have we're gonna include white people in this as well. We're just trying to create like an equal society and more like whatever. Then why not rebrand?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
instead of sticking with something that specifically is discriminatory in its naming.
I would say that
You
the
know?
argument would be that black people have it harder and women have it harder, so that's why you don't rebrand.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
I think,
okay, okay, yeah,
but then a lot of people will disagree with that. Yeah, but hey,
interesting.
it's good to talk about how similar they are and how they actually like so many of these things parallel. And if they had
Yeah,
different branding around them, lots of men's rights activists
yeah.
would be feminists because they'd be like toxic masculinity is really unhelpful to men.
Mm, yeah, exactly. And how quite a lot of feminists are like, man, I really care about men's issues.
Yeah.
The fact that so many men like commit suicide, that's like a really important issue that we need to address.
Mm,
But it comes out in a wash because they just think that they have to disagree with the other side.
mm. Yeah,
So
exactly.
very weird.
All right, we
But
should
yeah,
move on.
that was the feminism podcast.
Feminism.
After
Next
that,
one
what
was
did we have?
climate change
Oh,
with
climate change.
Vibe again, big Vibe with the four
Big
eyes, and
vibe.
he's on his YouTube there, Vibe with four eyes,
Nice.
and Dr. Rexy Llama. Guys,
Oh, damn.
Rexy, the I don't even know how old he is, 13, 14, 15. They've got different ages in Korea, so he's
19.
young, he's Korean, he came on, he wore a cowboy hat. He told
He
us
wore a
that Mother
cowboy
Nature is
hat.
going to
That's
kill
right.
us no matter what. Somehow Mother Nature's going to strike again. And
Yep. That's right. He
yeah.
was like, what's that? A defeatist? No,
Yeah. Or
like
like catastrophist. He was just like that was it.
catastrophist.
It's done,
Yeah.
guys. We're
He
done.
was like,
We're all screwed.
we're all screwed. It was funny. It was interesting to like have someone that has that podcast because it was so I don't think I was actually prepared for it. I was kind of like, okay, we're gonna have this podcast and there's gonna pretty much we're gonna know what like the points that are gonna come at me. I can kind of debate them. And then he came in with like, yeah, we're fucked.
Yeah, basically.
And yes, it was interesting. But it was interesting having him on. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely value people that challenge me on my views and make me think about it and think about my views and have to like talk about like have to flesh out the way that I talk about my issues and
Mm,
get it across to people that have a completely different outlook on
mm.
the issue than I did. So I
And
really found it very interesting.
looks like it's a really super important one to you. You became vegan because of it, and
Yeah,
it's
so it
probably
was
going to influence your voting in the upcoming.
yeah, so it was after the climate change podcast, which was a couple of weeks after the animal rights,
Mm,
a couple of like a month, that
yeah.
I actually was like, okay, I need to. In my research for it, I was like, okay, I need to like really seriously think about my animal product consumption, and that was kind of like the catalyst for me becoming vegan.
Mm,
But I I care about this quite a lot. I looking into the research and stuff like that. For me, it like I put it kind of like this. I'm like, what if? All right, what if you're a climate change denier? All right, and you're like, no way this happens. If you're correct and climate change is not real, all right, and it's just a big phony thing created to like make money from or like steal money away from the coal industry or whatever it is, then what happens is some companies, some massive corporations lose out on a bit of money.
mhm,
Um, our taxpayer dollars get assigned in certain ways, in different ways than they are now, and maybe there's like a little bit of a step back in some other areas where usually the governments would put money because of that. All right, that's if you're right.
mm.
But if I'm right and climate change is real, then we're dealing with the wiping out of the human race as we know it. Okay,
Mm,
not to be alarmist, but like that's like end game. I don't know how long it'll be, right? Like it might be like 5 years, it might be like 200 years, it might be 1,000 years. I don't know.
mm,
I don't know when it's going to happen, but like that's a huge gamble to take, I think.
mm.
And the potential downside is like worth us being like, well, let's just hedge our bets. Let's just be careful because we don't want the whole human race to. So let's kind of like swing a little bit that way. That's how I kind of put it to people these days, and because of it, I'm voting single issue. And so like I think this is enough of a problem. I think it's been ignored for too long. I think it's a huge thing that we need to worry about, and the government is not taking it seriously because people aren't taking it seriously. And we need to take it seriously. And the way that I'm doing that is by ignoring everything else in the world when it comes to my voting next election. I'm going to be like, okay, what are your views on what are you going to do about it? Like,
Yeah.
what is your policy on that? And that's how I'm going to be voting because I need a government in place that is going to take this seriously and is going to like seriously make some changes and get us on the right track. I don't know. That's my take on it.
Single issue voting.
Yeah,
Single
which
issue
I'm
woke.
not an advocate for usually. All right, but
This one's important enough for you.
when you're talking about, so like, okay, let's take another issue. All right, let's say that in one of the elections you were voting based on homosexual rights, okay, and or like gay marriage, all right, okay, and you were like, oh, I'm ignoring everything else and I'm just voting on this one issue, all right. On one side, you've got there's discrimination, there's people that are being mistreated in society, all right, and have like higher suicide rates because of this discrimination and are not coping in society and are sequestered from society, and it's horrible. It's a horrible situation, all right. And then on the other side of that debate, you've got people being like, oh, like I don't want these homosexuals around because it's a sin and all this kind of stuff, right? So they're the flip sides of that coin. All right. If you make that a single issue vote, all right. If you vote on it, like single issue voting, yeah. Okay, they're the flip sides. Okay, so you've got some people that won't be discriminated against, can live better lives and happier lives. My issue that I've chosen to take as my single issue vote is the extinction of the human race, or like a little bit of money. All right, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, I
so
feel
like
it's disingenuous to describe it as a little bit of money, but
okay, a lot of money, because it is going to be a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like my take on it.
Yeah,
I'm not doing this lightly, and I'm not an advocate for single issue voting usually because the stakes are never great enough. But I feel like the potential stakes, I'm going to call them the potential stakes, are great enough that I think I'm justified in making this a serious issue that I'm voting on in this election.
Yeah. Fair.
In the next election.
There you go.
In a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I don't know. Good. Would you disagree? Would you disagree with me on that?
No, I agree. I'm not a denier of science. I just I just go with these kind of things. I trust that the scientists know what they're talking about, and they all seem to be in a pretty large consensus. So yeah, let's listen to it. I actually saw this Simpsons episode today that was like about global warming, and
Disney
they were like,
Plus.
Yeah, Disney Plus. I'm watching all the Christmas ones, and they were like, "Oh no, global warming! What would you know? By pure coincidence, every single scientist was right." And I was like, oh, "That's so funny."
Yeah, it's just a weird one to me because it's like the consensus is there. Like every scientist is saying this is a thing, and yet we still have people being like, "Not a thing."
Not a thing. Well, Donald Trump. I mean, he's done years worth of damage to the conversation.
Oh man, 100%.
Like saying, what did he say? China global warming is a scheme cooked up by China to rid the Western countries of money, basically. So
yeah, fun. Yeah, and we see like New Zealand making like leaps and strides in legislation around climate change and the way that companies are held to account for their carbon usage and carbon emissions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's a real like groundswell movement. Like the people on the ground are behind this, like and even quite a lot of the companies are getting on board and being like, hey, we're for this.
Yeah.
Like we want to do this because it's good for our country. It's good for even though it hits our bottom line a little bit, in the long run, this is what we want to do because the society in New Zealand is pushing for it and being like, hey, companies, we want you to do this. So they see an upside in being the people that are the first people to be like, hey.
Yeah, that's that's what you need to do is you need to make it an incentive in the free market for companies to do this, basically, is where the big change will be. So if companies think that they're going to have better like press about it, or like they're going to see greater consumer advocacy for them because of this issue, then then you've won, basically. That's what I think that's where it is.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree, and it kind of really bugged me because I don't know why, but I've always perceived Australia as a country that I could be proud of,
Mm,
and a country that I love. And when I see New Zealand making leaps and bounds ahead of us in terms of like what we're doing, it really like bugs me.
mm,
It really like makes me sad for like where our country's at.
mm.
And so
Well, I
yeah,
knew.
I want
I knew where to go.
man, he's jumping
He's
ship.
jump ship. New Zealand. Yeah,
100%. But yeah, that's my whole take on it, and that's why I'm voting single issue next election. But
fair enough.
climate change, get on it, guys,
Climate
please.
change.
100% consensus.
That's also disingenuous, but hey.
Yeah, you're right. It's not quite 100%,
it's
but yeah,
basically.
please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to add? Climate
Nah, I
change.
feel
Great
like
podcast.
climate
I
change.
really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of
I didn't know
obviously.
anything. I didn't know much about it, so I was just sitting there like, yeah, I agree.
it. Yeah.
And laughing
Just
at
letting me
Rexy
get
with
on
his
my
cowboy
rant.
hat.
Get on my rant. Get on my soapbox.
Nice.
Yeah, well,
the next
that
one.
was climate change. Yeah, so the next podcast we had was morals
Morals and
and
ethics.
ethics,
Yeah.
and we had Yvette's on, Mr. Yvette's on again,
So Yvette's
and
and
we had Slodio,
Big
a newcomer who's
Slodio
actually in chat right
there
now.
in the chat. The man,
Mate,
the myth,
he was
the
here
legend.
for morals and ethics, and oh my goodness, what a conversation!
Yeah.
I think the big one that we got stuck on was free will.
Yeah.
I really struggled to wrap my head around it. I got to a point where I was like, how can you even argue that?
Oh my goodness. The reason I wrote that in there is because I have looked at it so much since, and I've come to the point where I don't know if anyone has any free will anymore. But it's going to take so long to talk about it that we should talk about it on a different podcast, I think.
Okay. All right. That's cool. Yeah, it was a very interesting.
Yeah.
Really, I really enjoyed having Slodio on, and Mr. Yvette's obviously studied
philosophy
at university, and he was like, he added heaps to the conversation.
He also told me to watch this show called The Good Place, and it was really good for ethics stuff. Like, it was really cool. It talks, so like, I guess the main thing is one of the like two main characters is a professor of moral philosophy, and he like the whole time like there's so many like ethical dilemmas that they put in there, and then teaches you about like different types of moral philosophy, I guess. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
I have heard of.
It's like,
I have heard of the show.
It's not great acting or anything. I think I just really enjoyed it because I enjoy that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a comedy, right?
It's a little bit, yeah. It's just there's some dodgy acting in there. Some like,
damn, such a shame.
Yeah, a bit of a shame.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
A good show ruined. But yeah, we also in morals and ethics, we talked about like where we get our morals from, and we kind of came to this conclusion that it was like morals are influenced by like your authority figures. When you're like growing up, you get it from like, I can't remember how we define them, but like knowledge. So like where
as you research more, yep.
And then also your experience.
Yep.
So it's like your actual like what you your interactions and what you what happens to you throughout your life and your direct experiences. And we were it was really interesting because we were saying, it was like, it's interesting when you look at the different generations and you go, well, back when we were kids, or back when our parents were kids, they got brought up in a very authoritarian, like their parents knew the way. They not only they got a lot of their morals from there where their parents were like drilled it into them, but they also got it a lot from the knowledge, but they didn't get as much from experience. And so you get this like, whereas kids today, they don't have as much authority drilling into them the right things, because the parental structure is falling apart a little bit, and there's this push for kids to be a little bit more independent and make up their own minds and decisions and stuff like that.
And the internet's around all the time too.
Yeah, and the internet's around, so they're getting their knowledge from the internet, where it can be they learned like a little bit not to trust their knowledge, because it's like they get conflicting views all the time from every different source, and so they rely upon their experiences, so their morals and their ethics are a lot more flexible. Where kids of today, whereas like one of my parents, like not my parents, but like let's go boomers, just for a meme. When boomers are talking about when they're talking about, for example, gay marriage and the rights of gay people, they go, well, I got brought up when I was a kid, I got taught that homosexuals was a bad thing, and that got really drilled into me by my parents and by my church and my teachers, and so that's where I'm sticking with that, and they're a little bit less flexible, even though quite often they do experience homosexual people and end up going, well, they're not actually that bad. Whereas kids today, they don't, the knowledge is not, they don't trust that authority, and they don't trust the learning from the internet. So they have like an interaction with a gay person. They go, hey, that person's just like me.
Yeah. A lot more. I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but something I definitely believe about the younger generation is that their truths are a lot more defined by their experiences, whereas opposed to older generations, which will shape their experiences through what they know to be truths or what they perceive to be true. And kids can like literally fact check their parents on the fly, like oh yeah, no, it's not okay to do this, and they'll be like, bang bang bang, well actually this person did this and they seem to be fine. So
yeah, exactly,
it's like that's a whole different
ballgame. But yeah, it was a really interesting topic, and it was a really interesting podcast, and I came out of it understanding how I get my morals and ethics like a little bit better, which I guess is the idea behind these podcasts.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely made me a lot more introspective. And yeah, the free will thing, man, that has messed me up the last few months. Gets oh my gosh, we have to talk about that.
See, my thing, I just get to this point where I'm like, no, I have free will. Fuck you.
That's a good way.
Don't try to tell me that I don't have it.
Yeah.
Stop trying to influence me. Fresh. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, so after that podcast, we
had social skills. And this one was cool. This was Spicy Mayo's first podcast.
Oh man, Spicy Mayo, what a guy, what a
lad. Spicy Mayo with a H. He also does he still stream?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool. I haven't seen him for a while. I was going to say
Mad
surely not another one. Kat was also there. Fly was also there. The dynamic duo. And Louis came on. Because I met him at IRL at PAX, and his social skills were top notch. So we brought him on for the social skills podcast. It was really, really interesting listening to him talk about being like a really like tall kid and so on, and like he didn't have to. He was like saying things like he could just beat up kids if he wanted. So he had a different kind of outlook on life to a lot of others. But social skills is really interesting. We ended up doing a podcast debrief on it, and we talked about. I think one of the main things we talked about was how it's very hard to be a prideful person, and have quite adept social skills, because like especially in Australian culture, there's that natural ribbing that boys do, and like a little bit of ripping each other down and that kind of thing. And if you're far too prideful, and maybe pride comes, so yeah, if you can't take that, then you often lash out and say things that are not within the boundaries of the natural ripping that boys kind of do. And I think and I was thinking a little bit more about it, even to expand on that, and so much of arrogance, pride, and bravado comes from these insecurities, right? Where if you have a person who's constantly rah, rah, I'm the best at this, you know that I'm all the best and I'm the biggest and the strongest, it seems to be like these people are always saying that either because they deep down don't think that they're the best at things, or they're afraid that it will at some point show that they're not actually the best, that they can't just rest on people finding out that they are the best at these things naturally. So it kind of stems from so much insecurity. And then we also talked about how it's really hard to be insecure and be friendly to people, and also regulate your own mental health, because you end up falling short, and it doesn't help you to you can't be accommodating maybe for people who say, because people are going to say the wrong thing sometimes, and if you're actually quite insecure, then it's a struggle for you.
Yeah. I definitely remember us also talking about how to make friends. I know that there was that's something that people really struggle with, especially once you become an adult. When you're a kid, quite often you kind of like fall into these friendships because of you're just like always around each other at school. Whereas
Mm,
when you're an adult, you've all got separate lives. You're all leading your lives, and it's very hard to get together. And
mm,
how you really need to be intentional, and how hard it is to step out of your comfort zone and approach someone, and
mm.
how to develop a friendship past just like acquaintances once you're an adult really requires you to be very vulnerable and
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
really step outside your comfort zone
Mm,
and to be willing to be the person that takes the first step um, and approaches someone and we also drew parallels between making friends and like relationships in
yeah.
terms of like the beginning like sexual relationships I guess or
Mm.
like not sexual but like proper relation
Romantic
uh,
relationships?
romantic relationships.
Yeah.
I remember on the podcast I struggled with
Mate, it's just all
um
sex to you, isn't
mate. Oh
it?
no, oh no.
Oh no.
But yeah, and drawing parallels, the difficulty between the two, and you really take someone to be very vulnerable
Yeah.
to be able to like develop past just that initial connection.
Yeah.
But the benefits of surrounding yourself with people that care about you and that you can rely upon is really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
no, yeah,
Um
100%. And
being
I think
vulnerable.
that one I really enjoyed Social Skills podcast
Mm,
because of how important I find it. Like I use those skills every day. You
mm,
know, every day in my work, in my life. It's like people don't realize, but social skills are like form the fabric of our society.
mm.
You
Yeah.
know, the base of our society is all about our social interactions and social connections. And if you're just imagine a society where every single one of us is terrible at socializing and
Yeah.
terrible at forming these bonds and connections, it'll fall apart.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we'd go back to like tribalism and being like, well, I mean, that person doesn't match up with me, so I'm going to kill them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like that's and we came from there because we found ways to like coexist and
Mm,
get along with one another. So I
yeah.
found it really fascinating because of how important I perceive it.
Yeah, definitely. And like how hard it is like very often because people are very dynamic. Everything's grey with social skills and with people. It's not all black and white. So
Mm,
we understand why so many people can have problems like social anxieties and issues with being social. Like it's I think that's very normal for for a lot of people. So it was good to talk about that for sure. And
mm.
hear everyone's different like hear everyone's different perspectives on it because we had so many different people with just different backgrounds.
Yeah, it was a really
Mm.
interesting podcast. But after social skills, we rolled into the girls
E-girls.
with
Yeah.
Sintimas came on again. Sorry,
Inte, yeah.
making Sinti. Sintimas came on again, a repeat offender, and Licky as well. Man,
Yep.
Licky's there. She's been on quite
Yeah.
a few.
Licky was on 3, I
Um,
think. She
sorry,
was
it's
yeah.
Licky on Twitch. But yeah, we basically we touched on with this podcast, e-girls. We were talking about how girls interact on the internet, and we really wanted to discuss how lots of people think that it's all these girls on Twitch and online, they're stealing the viewers from other people on Twitch. And we kind of like, there's quite a lot of research to back up that that's just not the case. And that
Mm,
actually girls have it a lot harder on Twitch because the people that tune into their streams, are quite a lot of them are there for the wrong
mm.
and that they're not retained viewers.
Yes.
They're there for the wrong reasons
Mm,
completely. And then also it was like those people that are watching for that, we're never going to watch your stream anyway.
mm.
So you're not missing out on those viewers. They were never going to watch you.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what we kind of came to on that
Yeah.
topic. However, it was really interesting. The study that you showed, Fresh,
Mm.
that was like, the words that get the commonality of words that get said in chats on Twitch, but compared between women and men.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
it was like in the man's ones, it was lots about like gaming and games
Yeah.
and
Emotes and
bros
just
and
general
emotes and
haha lol.
general haha banter.
Yeah.
Whereas in the female chat, it was like boobs,
Yep.
tits,
Marry,
sex,
love, like just
marry,
all
love,
anything to do with
like
appearance and
anything
general.
to do with appearance
Yeah.
and like sexual feelings and all
Yeah.
that. It really showed this contrast in
Mm.
like how they're treated and how much harder it must be
Yeah.
to be a woman on trying to be a woman on social media compared to men when you've got these people that are there for the wrong reasons.
It'd just be super obnoxious. Like pretend we're trying to do a podcast now and people continuously come in and I mean, maybe it's an ego boost to like us at some points if everyone's like, oh mate, look at that mustache or
Yeah,
something.
I mean, yeah, definitely, yeah. But that kind of thing, it's like
it's different as well because it's not
it's
as
different.
it's not as sexualized.
It's not as
Yes.
personal, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not tied
Definitely.
into your value a lot.
No,
So
and it's also something that I'm putting out there as
yeah,
I'm
yeah, true.
I'm choosing I'm
Yeah.
choosing this. I'm not choosing that I'm a woman.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not choosing, I don't know, I guess like the
To
size of
have
your breasts and
breasts.
stuff like that. Yeah, to
Yeah.
have breasts, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, true.
But I remember afterwards being like, man, we covered everything.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. That was a good
So
podcast.
that was definitely worth a re-listen, I think, that one.
Yeah, yeah. The e-girls one. It was really good having those two girls there as well because they'd experienced heaps of they've both been on Twitch for a long time and they've experienced heaps of it from the e-girls point of view.
No, 100%. And quite a lot of that podcast, we did that whole 2 men, 2 women to keep the balance there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the podcasts, like more so than any of the other ones, I was just listening.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I dominate the conversation sometimes. And but
that's
yeah,
good.
I spent a lot of that time listening.
They're good at keeping stuff moving. I struggle. I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing a podcast. I thought we were just chatting. Speaking of keeping it moving, the last one.
Good segue.
One fortnight ago, we're up in 2 hours 20, so let's keep it going. Mental health with with 2 brand new people. First one, Blackfire Rebel, Luke Pitt Roche.
Who's
from
on Twitch?
The UK. He's on Twitch, twitch.tv/Blackfire Rebel. And also our IRL friend Zach. Oh, Prozac, we were calling him.
Prozac, as we called him.
Bit of a play on words, Matt. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it was really good for having both of them. First, Luke had heaps of personal experience and a mental health condition as well called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So he was able to share heaps about that. Like cool stuff that I had no idea about. I've learned a lot about mental illness, but I didn't know about this. And his like vitamin D lamp that he has and that kind of stuff. So that was really, really cool. And talking about past experiences of being in poor places and that. And then Zach was just like so knowledgeable on this. I found myself just listening sometimes, just being like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense. Like his life is this, but still it's just like, wow.
So Zach, obviously he does a lot of work with young people and quite a lot of the issues around that young people deal with are mental health issues. And so he's just become super knowledgeable about it. And it was really, I once again, this is another one of those podcasts where I listened so much and learned so much from him that I was, man, a great choice of guest. And it was just a really interesting conversation. We talked a lot about the stigma of mental health because I feel like that's almost one of the biggest issues around mental health right now is that there's still this stigma and people don't go get help. They don't seek help because of this stigma where they're like, I mean, it happened to me. Obviously I shared a few of my feelings and stuff where I felt like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to people. I felt that like there was something wrong with me now and I was broken because of mental health issues that I had. So the stigma it's real and it's still happening today. And any conversation that we can have about it and any awareness that we bring to the topic and make it become a part of the norm is just so important. That I really enjoyed that podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, 100%.
That was good. And then Zach talked a little bit. We kind of brought up a lot of different stuff.
We brought up a lot of different issues.
There's one that stuck out to you.
Yeah, I really liked Zach had this quote.
We talked about this already.
We talked about this, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there was a little bit more to it. So
Yeah.
I talked about it earlier in regards to toxic masculinity,
Mm,
and he was saying that Australia has this culture problem, and the tall poppy culture is one of those problems, which is a little bit about like tearing down the people that are succeeding. They're doing really well,
mm,
then you want to like, oh, they're standing above the rest, so we're going to level the playing field by bullying them a little bit and
mm,
being a little bit toxic and bringing them down. But it was interesting that he put it in the context of Australia having like a little bit of a crisis.
mm,
He we're a young nation and we haven't quite hit our stride yet. We're still fleshing things out and figuring out who we are and what our national identity is and
mm,
all this kind of stuff. And in a world where it's not necessarily perceived as okay, or like people want everybody to just be individuals rather than for you to like have a national pride thing kind of thing. But he was saying that like we might be like a little bit embarrassed or a little bit jealous of the fact that we don't have this like really in-depth culture that's really developed because we're such a young nation that we're potentially grasping at things that we perceive as like Australian identity
mm,
that are actually maybe not necessarily good things.
mm,
For example, he mentioned the tall
mm.
poppy syndrome, where you like tear people down. He also, what was the other one that he mentioned?
The
Um,
She'll Be Right. That was the main one
yeah,
with the mental
the
health.
she'll be right one,
Yeah.
where it's like that's why it related to mental health. Yeah, where it was like this thing where we kind of pride ourselves on being like laid back and not caring and being like, hey, everything will be all right, like don't worry about it, and how
Mm,
that feeds into the stigma of mental health
mm,
and it being a negative thing, and like, oh, toughen up princess is another one,
yeah.
and these things that like we're kind of toxically clinging to as an Australian identity because
Yeah.
we don't know what our identity is
Yeah.
and how it's not healthy. And it really struck a chord with me and
Yeah.
really sat. It really obviously hit something in me that I recognized as like a problem that we have in Australia,
It
and
was a
one that
really cool way
I
to put it.
it was a really cool way to put it, and it really stuck out to me. So I just wanted to mention it again
Mm,
because I think that it's something that we need to address, this stigma towards mental health and also towards a few different things
mm.
that we've mentioned. It really plays out across the board in terms of quite a few of our topics we've talked about. But yeah, very interesting podcast. Once again, another interesting podcast. But man, we've had a few of them.
We say it
We've
about
had a
all of
few of
them.
them.
Very interesting, this
Yeah,
one. Very
very
interesting.
interesting
Wait,
podcast.
this one
Give
was
it a
more.
listen. Give it a listen. Head over to our YouTube channel.
Like, this whole
Watch them
podcast
all
rewind has
back
just
to
been
back.
us advertising our own.
It's
Guys, head
basically
on
a big
over.
ad.
The Freshly Awoken podcast. It's very interesting.
But I do like the fact that there's obviously been a few topics that we have that have come into play throughout our podcasts that are like a lot more
Yeah.
um and this stigma is one of them, like the stigmas behind things.
Yep.
In every single one we were like, we really need to like break down the stigma, and I think that's been something that we like has been a basis for our podcast a little bit, is like that's what we're here to do. We're here to
Mm-hmm.
just promote these topics and get the conversation happening and break down the walls around them. And yeah, I definitely feel like we're doing that, even if it's to a small audience at the moment. But
Mm.
yeah, I really enjoy the conversations that we're having.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it is interesting that these similar kind of things keep coming up. And Slow was saying before he likes how we're low key getting into more personal stuff, I guess, on the podcast.
Yeah.
So
No,
it
yeah,
has been that way. I
100%.
guess things like
we're
mental
both like,
health and social skills are pretty personal.
yeah, very personal, and like, I've said this a couple of times. It's like, man, I feel like as much as I shared a little bit about like what I go through, I still keep a lot in reserve. You know, I
It's
don't.
that toxic masculinity, mate.
Yeah, right. I'm too private. You know, like I don't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah, you can open up, mate. Boys don't have to always be boys.
Yeah, but like I definitely I enjoy the fact it's almost like a personal like counseling session every week on different topics.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's interesting because it's like a little edgy. It's like some of us are moderately educated on the topic, and like we just like talking about it. So it's a low level introduction to a lot of
Oh no, yeah,
interesting
100%,
topics for
100%. I'm
most
not
people.
walking away from here being like I am on a
Yeah, now we know about mental
yeah.
health.
No, 100%.
We should unveil plans for next year.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
damn. Okay,
Damn.
um, so we kind of discussed it a little bit, and obviously we're going to keep Freshly Awoken podcast going
Mm,
every fortnight. We really like what we're doing.
mm,
We like the fact that we can like really get down into the nitty gritty of some of these topics and discuss them and bring them out into the open. But we definitely think that there's a place to have conversations that are one a little bit less formal again, and a little bit more fun, but then also are more topical and are
mm.
more relevant to like what's going on right now. So we're did we decide on the name?
Yeah,
We
yeah, yeah.
decided on this name,
Yeah,
right?
we can
Yeah.
unveil.
Yep. So we're calling it shooting the breeze.
Shooting the
So
breeze.
basically it's a saying that means like talking with your friends basically, and talking about anything and everything, shortened to stubs. I like that. I like being able to
STBZ. Yeah.
stbz stubs.
Stubs.
But yeah, basically the premise behind it is that like we're thinking potentially once a month. Obviously we're not revealing like when we're going to go live with it
Mm,
and 100% when it's going to happen, but this
yeah.
is our ideas for what's to come this year.
Mm,
The idea behind it is that once a month, approximately, we will have like a group of people on, and any issues that they want to talk about, or anything that's a hot topic right now that they want to talk about, we can discuss in an open forum with the people that are here.
hmm
We can have some beers and shoot the breeze,
Shoot the
basically.
breeze. And we'll have more people.
Shoot the
Like we're
breeze.
thinking,
Pew, pew, pew.
I mean, I feel like 10 maybe should be our maximum.
Yeah, 10 maybe at
Maybe
max. Yeah.
that's too many. I don't know. Maybe 8, 9.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
We'll see
the
how
thing
it
is
goes.
that like there's no whereas like with these ones we're going like, well, we have a topic and we want to get through the topic and discuss
Yes.
all aspects of it.
Yep.
Whereas this is kind of like one of those things where we can put a firm time frame on it and be like, hey, we've talked for 2 hours,
Yeah.
that's us.
Yeah.
You know, like even if there are more hot topics to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the idea, and I think it could be really good for us, and I think
Yeah.
it'll be really interesting and really fun.
And I think
So
we'll probably along the way get topics that come up and everyone wants to keep talking about, and we'll go, you know what, we could make that into a freshly awoken
into a
topic.
podcast.
Yeah. And we
Exactly.
can explore this a bit further in more
Mm,
detail. But yeah,
yeah.
I'm liking it. I'm liking it. This was
I'm
Woke's
liking it.
idea, guys. He's
Yeah.
mastermind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Credit where
But
credit's
yeah,
due.
definitely something that we're looking at doing this year and could be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very very interesting.
But before we sign off, are you
Oh,
ready? Beer review. Yeah, that was perfect, mate. That was good.
perfect.
I
Yeah,
actually
right,
think,
perfect.
I mean, the second clap was not 100%, but it was pretty good.
No, yeah,
All
it was
right,
pretty good, pretty close, pretty
I'm
close.
going.
You're going.
Single fin
Hit us with
lager.
that beer
No,
review.
lager. My
Ooh!
goodness, it's a
Oh
summer
my
ale.
god, it's a
It's
summer ale, mate.
I
Jeez.
don't drink that lager crap. Oh my gosh. This is like one of the most drinkable beers I've ever had. Like I could buy cartons, I feel, of this forever. And I think it's because it's not a really heavy ale. It's liked by almost everyone, but it has enough taste that it's not a lager. It's not, it's and like it's I don't know. It's pretty hoppy. So it's still got that ale taste, but
Nice.
it's not too heavy that people who don't love IPAs or any darker kind of ales would not like it. So
Yep.
it's a really good all round beer. Like I would buy
Nice.
many cans of this. It's my new like go to having people over. Buy a carton of single fin.
Buy a carton of single
Yeah,
fin. Hey.
everyone loves it.
It's
It's
not
good.
like super expensive either.
No,
It's
it's
like
not
60
super
bucks a carton.
expensive. Yeah. So
Sometimes if on sale, you can get
win.
it for 55.
Absolute win.
Um,
I reckon it's
yeah.
a good 18 to 19 out of 20. This beer.
To be honest, I have bought multiple cartons
Yeah,
of it already.
yeah.
Yeah. And I drink it all the time. It's a great beer.
Is it relatively like new? Because I feel like I didn't. It must be like a year old maybe or something. I don't know. Or maybe it just got discovered more.
It's Gauge Roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah, I'm pretty
Gauge
sure.
Roads. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So Gauge Roads is a fairly new brewery. I think it's coming on like 2, maybe 3 years now.
Okay.
And it was like it started down in Fremantle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty sure. And Gauge Roads, man, I was on them early. So they've got an IPA called Sleeping Giants that I frothed. That was like all I drank for like a good year. Single fin, like it's just an all round great beer.
All round great beer.
I'm with you. I'm
Yep.
with you. Well, I drunk Eagle Bay Kolsch, a definite favorite of mine. Eagle Bay Brewery, just south of Dunsborough. And oh my goodness, it is a tasty, tasty beer. So it's a Kolsch, which is a German beer, and it's still an ale, but
Mm.
the way that I would describe it, it's kind of like a cross between a pale ale and a lager. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
it sits somewhere in the middle there. So it
Mm.
is really, really lighter
Okay.
than a pale ale,
Really?
really easy to drink. Um, Goes down, like you can smash it down fast. It's not like ridiculously hoppy. Like it's not as hoppy as a pale ale. It's like, but it is. There are some hops in there, but like they're light. I think they'd say that they take the hops off the top
Mm.
or something like that of the
Hops
brew.
off the top.
Hops off the top. But it's kind of like one of those really easy sessionable beers that you can. It's similar to summer ale. It's that light. It's not quite a pale ale. Like a halfway point between a pale ale and a lager, which is very similar to the single fin summer ale. And Kolsch is just like a little bit of a different style. But man, I've never had a Kolsch that I've disliked. And
Yeah,
Eagle
I
Bay
agree.
Kolsch is no different. It's easy to drink, and I have bought a lot of cartons of this, although it became so popular that it's relatively expensive now. So this was on sale, and I got it for $80 for a carton. So it's not something that I buy all the time anymore, even though I used to smash it when it was a bit cheaper. But yeah, great beer all around, and I definitely recommend you give it a try. Eagle Bay Kolsch.
Definitely. Eagle Bay Kolsch. What are you giving it out of 20?
Mate, 20.
20 out of 20?
20 out of 20, mate.
Mate, how many of those have you drank?
All day. Only one, but I'm gonna go grab another one. It was so I couldn't go and get more. I felt bad.
Fair enough.
I would have smashed 6.
Yeah, I've been drinking plenty of single fins today on the boat.
Oh, Vibe's here. Hey, Vibe, we were spoken of you.
Speaking of the devil, Vibe is here.
Yeah. But anyway, that's pretty much all we've got for you tonight on the podcast Rewind. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it was a good recap of the year, and we're planning on going with the podcast. But we're really excited. I don't want to speak for Fresh, but I've really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed all the spending time with us and delving into these topics and raising awareness and just talking about it, which is what we're trying to do.
That's it. And where can we find you, Woke?
Oh, mate, you can find me over at Mr. Woke TV on Twitch. So twitch.tv /Mr. Woke TV, just like it says above my thing here. Oh, wait, which way?
Yep, yeah, that's right. That's it. That's the way.
And just get on it. Come and give me a follow. It costs nothing. And
Yep, that's right.
Shoot the shit with me.
Go and give him a follow.
Sorry, shoot the breeze with me.
whoa, mate. Oh,
hey.
PG, Swiss Chow. And I mean, you'll find this podcast offline on YouTube, and pretty much literally every podcast platform that you can think of. Just search for the Freshly Awoken podcast, or you can head down into the podcast links, and they're there. But thanks for being here, everybody.
Yeah. Obviously, tell your friends about us. This has been a massive advertisement for.
Wait, hold on, you cut out. This has been a massive advertisement.
This has been a massive advertisement for the Freshly Awoken. Obviously, tell your friends about us, tell your family about us, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time in the new year 2020. I think approximately the 5th, but for another Freshly Awoken podcast.
Very nice.
Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody.
See you later, everyone.